This sitting is resumed. I wonder if honorable members' watches are synchronized to the right time. I believe that honorable members' watches seem not to be synchronized. I thought we were supposed to start back at 2:30, but it seems that 2:30 is 2:40. I was just wondering aloud and wondering if when some husbands go out and their spouses ask them to return on time, that when they do get in late, that they have a veritable excuse. I believe so because we seem to have a chronic problem with doing things on time. And I would suggest that honorary members, there's a old picture called "And Justice for All." I would suggest that you should really watch it and see the importance of time. When we last brought for lunch, we were debating the Appropriation Bill 2026. We shall return to that.
This Honourable House is now in standing Finance Committee. Honourable Member for Christchurch East.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Minister, I wish to thank you and your team for presenting yourself to answer the questions. I do note that when you started, almost everybody had their plate up. Yours happens to be one of those ministries. Now, I've had a concern for some time that affordable housing no longer is affordable. And low-income housing no longer is constructed at the rate or at the cost that makes it affordable to persons of low income. So I want to know what is in place and what is the plan to actually construct genuine low-income housing. If a house costs $160,000, $170,000 to build, that's not low income. Being serious. And I know there's a danger. You don't want to produce less than quality just because persons can't afford it. But equally, it's a matter of managing expectations as well. So I want to know what is the plan for genuine low-income housing that takes it down into that $100,000 and below bracket that can be afforded by persons who are really barely managing.
Thank you for your question, Honourable Member. And what you're saying is our #1 mandate in this ministry is to provide affordable housing for Barbadians. And we have had many discussions within the ministry, many roundtable discussions on how do we treat to decreasing the costs. Now, this is the kind of thing that can be perceived as trial and error. And I can tell you, Honourable Member, that when we first started the East-West program, for instance, we have the right technology, which is using steel frame technology, which most of the world is going to construct affordable housing. We can use a modular approach to these types of systems, and we can build faster. But one large component in this design and build methodology is the foundations. And I can tell you, Honourable Member, that in the beginning, we were pricing the foundations too expensive. In essence, over-engineering the foundations. And the Honourable Member from Christchurch West can tell you that. Hence, we were paying too much money and driving up the costs. So what the ministry, through the NHC as well, has proceeded to do is to get down the cost of the foundations. And the Honourable Member from St. George South can tell you that as well, in his tenure, that was one of the things that we trying to get down so that we can decrease the cost. Another component is the infrastructure works, which can be quite pricey. Now, we've had conversations on how we are going to fund this, because that component can also increase the overall cost of the development. I had a conversation with the Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast on this in regards to Lower Burney and getting that project started. Now, when you talk about materials, I've had conversations with contractors, specifically in the St. George Brighton project, where they did say that lessons learned would include, for instance, instead of using certain types of tiles, that we would go more to the click system, and you can get those pretty inexpensive out of China. So we have to be cognizant across the board of all the materials that we use that can also bring down the cost. But as you said, quite rightfully so, we do not want to compromise the quality of the finished product. But I can guarantee you that we will be looking from infrastructure works to foundation to quality of materials, look at how we can benefit from economies of scale, and look at how we can use innovative building techniques as well to be able to offer products. Now, we have a pretty experienced planning department, and they will play an integral role, given that the NHC will no longer be building like what they did before. We can concentrate on those areas of planning and design, and also possibly facilitating those said materials that can bring down the overall costs. So that is job one for us, offering affordable housing. And you are quite correct that we must pay specific attention to this matter. Thank you.
So in line with that, and your ambitious target of 10,000 houses in the next 5 years, and I think PS Nikki Smith put that equation into perspective and said that's 2,000 a year. Now, I realize there's been a trend recently towards larger scale developments. So you're going for bigger contractors who can build more houses. But I think that focuses entirely on the production and not the overall ethos of NHC. In the Elsa housing, there's some contractors that I saw constructed some houses. There's a fella I'm thinking of right now who did a fantastic job on a house in Time Bottom. But he has been unable to get any further work from the NHC. So it is, if you're looking to build 10,000 houses, and as I said, I laud your admirable objective, right? I'm not saying give away contracts to everybody, But I believe that we now need to relook at some of these small contractors, and instead of giving a man one house, you can't give a small contractor one house, right? If you're giving him something, you probably need to give him 4 or 5 that he can mobilize the equipment to do 4 or 5 houses in a certain area, buy the materials in such quantities that it brings down the costs. I want to know what is the plan for incorporating small contractors. You're gonna have to prove them. So a man, quite frankly, can't get 5 houses from you unless y'all have gone and seen the houses that he's built. He must have a body of work. You can't gamble on a man who's never built a house, right? But you must be able to show his quality of work, that you can evaluate it, see that it's structurally sound, whatnot. But I believe that those persons need a chance, and I do not think you will get to the 10,000 houses in 5 years unless you have a system that incorporates both the large contractors and also the small contractors. And the small contractors getting work as well drives the economy in a way that only the large contractors will not. So what's the plan for that?
Honourable member, that is exactly the point, and I agree with you 100%. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one, and 10,000 houses over 5 years is 2,000 houses a year. And yes, we will take large chunks out of that target by partnering, say, with a developer that can deliver 500, another guy can deliver 300. But guess what? When we get to 1,500, we can look for the smaller contractors to give them some work. And I'm glad to hear that you have the contacts of somebody who did very good work, that we can do, say, 5 to 10 houses. And the thing about it is that they don't have the pockets to be able to fund 100 houses, but they can do 10. And then when they get the returns from that 10, they could do another 10. And then when you get the returns from that 10, you do another 10. But guess what, honorable member? That's the same thing that we did in the, what I call the whole restart. So we didn't bite off more than we can chew. And that is how we methodically was able to then fund ourselves, go again, fund ourselves. That way we can be fiscally responsible and also in a predictable way, keep building. So I agree with you 100%. We need to look for those partners. And I would like to hand off now to the GM to let us know how are we tracking contractors who are doing good work and getting them back into the loop.
That is the phase that the Chief Estate Officer, the Maintenance Section, and the Special Project Sections would handle. So I would want to turn that over now to the Chief Estate Officer, Mr. William Clark.
Thank you very much, GM. That's an interesting question. Over the years, we've had direct contact with a number of gateway contractors, a number of contractors throughout the Hurricane Elsa project. I think there were almost 300 contractors in total that we would have worked with. And the truth is, quite a number of them have done excellent work. And we have been keeping a database on the ones who would have come through well, the ones who have had some type of structure to their companies and who produce. And so we'll be able to put that list together, so you'll be able to see who are the contractors that we can continue with the project that was highlighted. And I think that's an interesting way of helping these ones to come to the table to bring together that number as well. Only moments ago, Mr. Lord was saying that we can utilize the houses that are the older houses that we plan to bring back on stream. And I think that those contractors, well, we may not utilize them in large projects, we can utilize them on the houses that we want to bring back in use.
So I'm not a contractor, and I didn't think about certain things. I figure if you build a house, you build 2 houses, build 3 houses, effectively the same. Until the man made the point to me that the boxing and the framework and the scaffolding. When you get your first house and you get that stuff and you finish your house, you still have the stuff. The second house is when you start to make back some of your money on the outlay of the infrastructure to build the first house. And then the third house. So the more you build is the more money you make because effectively the stuff is paid for itself. So I am gonna ask that you consider the small contractors again. I am not satisfied that enough work has actually been given to the small contractors because a lot of them complain. And the government invested a lot of money in the construction gateway and whatnot. And if we don't roll the dice on some of them, if we don't take a chance on some of them, then you will never get the next big contractor coming out. The last point that I wish to make is, as I started by saying, manage expectations. We do need an option that is actually low income. And if you look at how some people in developments do it, you get a structure and then you start to choose the finishes, right? So you can then determine the final cost. To me, there's nothing wrong with constructing a shell if the person needs a shell, right? If I only have $60,000 to play with, I can't expect to get a marble floor, right? I might be able to get a structure that allows me to move in and I can add to it when I'm available to. So we may need to relook the complete finishes which drive the cost up and then take it out to the reach of the persons that we're actually trying most to help, and develop a system where we give you a basic and we give you options. You can take it as it is and then you can finish it yourself, but you're in and you got a roof over your head. Or you can then choose the finishes you want to suit the budget that you have. So I think we need to be a little bit more dynamic and flexible in how we approach it so we can tailor the solutions to fit the persons that we're actually trying to host. Thank you, sir.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to the Minister and your team. Minister, you've spoken about the importance of constructing climate resilient.
You may need Honourable Member to speak into the mic and speak a bit louder.
Okay, Mr. Minister, you've spoken about the importance of constructing resilient and climate-ready homes across Barbados, and you've created a nexus between the production of these homes and communities not being displaced. Now, I represent a constituency that has a place called Spall Hill and Chimborazo, and we have been displaced due to slippage in the constituency of St. Joseph. But I'm glad to hear that there's a plan for my constituents in that area, in those areas. And I heard the Deputy General Manager of NHC allude to the fact that there's 63 lots in a place which we Josephines affectionately call Ginger Works to be done. But this is not the first time that we've heard about Ginger Works. The reality is that there's an urgent demand for housing in St. Joseph, and we have many persons leaving St. Joseph because there's just no availability. There hasn't been any major construction, government funded construction housing since 2008. So I'm interested to hear what the timelines are for Ginger Works. My constituents have been asking all the time, so if we can get some specifics on Ginger Works, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And your predecessor spoke to me frequently about Ginger Works and wanting to get a housing solution for St. Joseph and, as you say, the Josephines. We even talked about ways in which we can get that project jump-started. Obviously, as I was said before, the infrastructure works for most of these developments is really the hold-up. And we were speaking about ways in which we can cleverly design the first phases so that that investment would not be as large. But let me invite Mr. Raymond Lord again to speak a little bit on the plans on Ginger Works.
Good afternoon again. Ginger Works, well, there are two projects we actually did in Ginger Works Branchbury. The first was the relocation project on the eastern side. That still has a couple lots that we developed with the the RDC, now the RUDC. I think that still has about 4 or 5 lots, I'm not sure, I have to check, that are available for specifically set for relocations. I know one side of the subdivision is a bit steep, but we think it's still developable. On the western side, we'll let my colleague Marvin speak about the timelines. There are hope paths for the western side, which is the branch by 63 units. So we've done 2 sets of work in there. Prior to that, we do recognize the issue of the relocations, and we did make some lands available at Torville. There are 4 lots, 8 lots in total, that we were able to make over time available at Torville. We are actively looking for lands, because when we move people in relocations, we don't want to move them too far out of their comfort zone. And we've started doing some desktop work to look for lands in St. Joseph. St. Joseph has a particular problem of being in the Scotland district. And that creates a particular type of dynamic that we have to work through. So we're still looking for lands in St. Joseph. I will let Mr. Williamson, Mr. Chair, bring up the final details on the Branchbury West project.
At Hope, we have on Ginger Works, Branchbury, we have 68 houses which will be for sale. The intention there is to use a timber type house, 2 and 3 bedrooms. Of the 68, it's approximately a 50-50 split between the 2 and 3 bedroom houses.
Chairman, I can't hear.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay, sorry. We've been out to tender for the infrastructure for the roads, and we will be hopefully commencing on site later on this year. I'd suggest probably around about August, September of this year, construction on the infrastructure.
From what I was able to gather, you said September this year?
This year, yeah.
And what type of houses will be constructed?
The intention there is we have a planning consent for the timber frame houses, the durability type houses.
Timber frame houses. And the number is 63?
68.
68, thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Minister, first let me congratulate you for assuming what I call a very important office in this government, the Ministry of Housing. Let me congratulate your team. They've started some very good work in housing, and I know under your guidance, they will carry on the good work on behalf of the people. Just let me begin by saying a society reveals its moral character, not in rhetoric, but how it shelters its people. And that's fundamental. There are 2 questions I have for the team, but before, Mr. Minister, there is a person who's now a senator who sang a song, "Don't Forget Me," and that person ended up in the Senate. I want to say to you, Mr. Minister, don't forget me, or the people of St. George South. My question, though, relates to, and St. George North as well. My question relates to the Hurricane Elsa project. And while I will ask the question, I want to congratulate the team and the government, because the mandate of rebuilding and repairing some 13 to 1,500 houses was indeed a remarkable achievement thus far. We are not finished as yet. So, having said that, my question relates to the Hurricane Elsa project. Having given the people of this country the assurance that we'll finish the houses, and I'm going to get into St. George in a way, because the people ask me to ask the questions. There have been houses in Carmichael, houses in Greens, that persons have been reaching out to NHC for comments and responses, and they have been far in coming. I get a lot of calls. Having been the minister, people still come to my office from St. Philip, St. Lucie, and I, as a true soldier for government, I respond appropriately. But I want to know, because leaving these houses without a roof, leaving these houses without windows, and the type of weather that we're seeing today, and I heard the GM, I think he mentioned that they're going for a supplementary. But you know, when we wait and we wait, we will end up in a situation, Mr. Minister, where we have to spend twice as much money on the houses than what would have been if we execute in a shorter time frame. So on behalf of my people and the other people of this country, there are probably about 5% of the houses remaining now from Hurricane Elsa. And I think we need to complete the houses. And I want to know from you, through you, what are the plans? Waiting on a supplementary, we may wait until I don't know when. But we have to get these houses completed, or otherwise you're going to be spending money, spending tot in mud, as we say. So that's my question to you, the Hurricane Elsa project. And I can go on and on about it, because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. That's not my aim here, because a lot of work has been done. But only as recent as last month, a young lady who's been reaching out to NHC for eons died from a heart attack and still has not moved into her house in Greens, 2nd Avenue. And these are some of the things that we have to face as a government. And me, I faced it when I went to the polls. And it was not kind. They were not kind to me with respect to housing. So I'm just asking you, what is the plan to complete these houses in the shortest time frame, sir?
Thank you for the question, Honourable Member. I want to thank you for your service. Not too long ago, you were in this hot seat as well. And you're correct, it's a very important ministry. And I am very privileged and honored to be able to be given this tremendous responsibility in empowering Barbadians in owning a house. And I'm also very proud to be a Barbadian and a citizen of a country that would start a program like the Hurricane Elsa Rebuild Program when there are lots of other countries that would not have done so. We know that there have been hurricanes in other places, Category 5 hurricanes that have devastated those countries. And we know that in those instances, if you weren't insured, they didn't have anything for you. So to live in a country that would execute a program like this for its citizens is tremendous. And to answer your question more specifically, we have, as you know, a small percentage left back, and we intend, or we have prepared a cabinet paper which has been sent to the Ministry of Finance to seek approval to unleash the remaining funds to finally complete the work of Hurricane Elsa. But I want to invite Mr. Clark to give a more detailed analysis on what the issues he has seen within this program with the remaining houses.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. First of all, I want to agree that the Hurricane Elsa program has been a mammoth task on the National Housing Corporation. We were asked to repair some 505 houses. We were asked to rebuild some 265 houses. What have we done so far? Throughout the process, we've completed 505 repairs throughout Barbados. Out of the 265 houses that we had to rebuild, we've already completed 247 of them. In the St. George area, we had 129 houses to repair. We've repaired 129 of those. There are one or two that some work still has to be done on, minor works that have to be done on. In the St. Philip area, 125 houses were repaired. In Christchurch, 98 were repaired, 86 in St. Michael, and in total, 505 repair houses were repaired. We've done a considerable amount of rebuild work throughout Barbados. In St. George alone, there were 70 houses that were repaired. In St. Philip, there were 87 houses repaired, 62 in Christchurch. In St. Michael and St. James, etc., coming down in those smaller areas, we've done some 19 houses in total. So in total, 247 houses were completed. And that's a lot of work that had to be done. Now, you asked about some of the challenges that we've been experiencing. First and foremost, funding to complete the other small percentage that has to be done is being put in place now. The Prime Minister, in a discussion we had at estimate, said she would deal with this on a separate matter. And recently we were told to prepare that document so that we can source the funds to carry out this work. And certainly once that is completed, we should see progress on those houses that the minister, that you would have asked about and the former minister would have spoken on with respect to houses that are incomplete, especially those with the roofs not on and windows and doors not in. But once that is completed, we can assure you that we will accelerate the work and we'll get that done. Then the only other challenges that we will face is probably, as the minister earlier said, trying to secure these contractors who were in place before. So then we'll have to try and recoup those guys to get them back on the job to complete those. But all that is being taken care of. We're looking at these individuals, and we're hoping to be able to recoup them once the funding is put in place.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, and your officer. Let me say it through you, Mr. Minister, the officer who spoke has indeed been a thorough strength in this program. And I see his age somewhat like me. He has gotten grayer and grayer, but I know he has done exceptional work in that program, the Hurricane Elsa program, and I want to use the opportunity to congratulate him for his dedication and commitment to the task. Not only while I was there, but I know he's still carrying on that duty. But like I said, you know, while the grass growing, the horse starving, and that was my issue, not to criticize, but to ask that we hastily focus on getting these 5% of the houses finished. My next question relates to, it is related, sir. I see you have the mic. It is related, so.
Honourable member, do not preempt the chair.
I see you grab the mic.
I am listening keenly.
I see you grab the mic, so I said my next question is related, and it is related to housing with respect to the National Housing Corporation and the whole strategy surrounding. This morning I heard, because while coming to the chamber, I listened attentively with respect to, and this shift, Mr. Minister, is something that started on this, the member for Christchurch West, and I carried it on to shift the focus from NHC, from building to maintenance. And indeed, the shift is still going on. I want to know where we are in terms of the transition and what is the time frame, because we might come again next year. You may come again next year and say what I said last year in the estimates, that we are shifting, and we keep shifting. So I need to know where we are with respect to the shift from building to maintenance with NHC.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The NHC is now mandated to enter into joint ventures, so to seek out contractors, developers that they can partner with. The Ministry of Housing will look for the land. DPS is engaged in that exercise with the legal department, with the chief legal officer in the Ministry of Housing, to be able to make the land available to the NHC to enter into joint ventures, and that is in play as a mandate. I will let the general manager speak on the maintenance component.
Well, in respect of the maintenance, and I believe you, MP, would be looking at the fact that there were supposed to be some changes as we move from building towards maintenance in respect of property management, et cetera. That facet continues. It is, I think the permanent secretary will eventually have to make a decision what we will do. What we've done at National Housing is that we've provided information in respect of the reorganization of the National Housing Corporation, because we've been instructed on more than one occasion, only recently in the estimates conversation, that National Housing Corporation is to do maintenance, and maintenance not only of the estates, but maintenance of government buildings, et cetera, those which are 4 stories and less. So it is still on tour. As to the timeline, I would have to leave that with the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance and the PS to determine, because I believe that's a conversation between him and the other government officials.
I didn't get an answer to the question. I hear we'll leave that to the other government officials. I didn't get an answer to the timeline to the question. It was passed on to the other government official. Through you, Mr. Minister.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Minister. And the process for the NHC and the ministry to get more involved in maintenance is an ongoing process. I would hope that we complete the reorganization of the NHC during the coming financial year, and by the second quarter, that we would be able to say we've gotten maintenance equipment, we've set up the structures necessary to be able to do maintenance to estates, do maintenance to uncomplicated government buildings, etc. by the end of the second quarter.
Thank you, Mr. PS. My final question, and I have a final question, sir, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Member, if it is connected, you can ask. If it is not, we will move on.
It is
I will
connected.
hear you and
It is
make the
connected
ruling.
because
Honourable Member, just ask, I will make the ruling whether it is connected or not. I'm listening.
Sure, sir. We spent a lot of time this morning speaking on building these houses and maintaining these houses, divesting these houses. But there's an elephant in the room, and I know that department is a lovely department, well-staffed, sir. I know these staff members exceptionally well, good members, dedicated. But the whole matter of housing and transferring a title and putting people in houses, we can have all the grand plans like I had and the government with the policies, but if we don't get the conveyancing done, we are spinning top in mud. So where we are, Mr. Minister, the question in terms of reducing the time through which a conveyance can be done, and I go to 1, because I know Bullins was finished probably before September the 4th. That was my last day there. I think, Nikki. Sorry, P.S. Smith, but I'm not certain persons are in Bullins today. And I think there's no fault of the officers per se. The process is indeed a very long one to convey properties to someone. And I know we had several colloquium where we looked at the digitization of the process and reducing the time frame. So I just want to know where we are with that process. That's the bugbear for you, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Yes, I know that you were very aware because there would have been some other properties that also were sitting for a little while that I came up on my watch. But what we are doing to speed up the process is throughout the ministry, we're starting with the land registry and the e-conveyancing, and you're very correct that the Prime Minister chaired over a land colloquium, which would have been in your tenure, where we were given certain directives to ensure that we can first stabilize and digitize our systems and prepare for e-conveyancing. So in addition to that, between the land registry and the land adjudication unit, those measures would have been taken, and you would be very familiar with those as well. So I have taken the baton from you, sir, and I will proceed with haste to the next colloquium, which is planned at the end of this month. Now, I would like to invite the CLO, and then after that, and the registrar of titles to give their input into how we can speed up this process as directed.
Thank you, Minister. In relation to the transfer of conveyances for NHC's purposes, which is separate and distinct from what came out of the colloquium with the proposed method of doing e-conveyancing, which ideally would be the best way or the most efficient way to get title to persons. But until that is fully implemented, what we are doing is, in terms of having the conveyances settled very early, even prior to receiving the necessary certificate of title, the certificate of compliance, we send the documents to the attorneys at law for perusal, both from the purchasers end as well as the mortgagee, so everything can be settled. And once we have that, then we try to set timelines to have matters done. It doesn't always work because we have challenges from time to time. The person comply with timelines. But suffice it to say, specifically in relation to Bullins, our external counsel is dealing with that matter, but we have there are 28 lots that are there. I think all 28 have been allocated, and they are at various stages of completion. There is a certificate of compliance for the land, and I think the planner has indicated, chief planning officer has indicated that he is working on getting these certificates for the houses. But that notwithstanding, agreements have been sent out, draft conveyance has been sent out, so matters are being worked on while that is being done from the planning end. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Kim Butcher, Registrar of Titles. In relation to the system at the registry. We have, in fact, as the minister said, started the stabilization efforts, and we are in the process of meeting with our consultant. We're going to start our stakeholder engagement soon over the next couple of months, over the next 4 months, as we search for a new system. In relation to the e-conveyancing efforts, coming on to the end of the process, there are 3 phases that we're looking to deal with, expediting the conveyances for the NHC units. As it relates to e-conveyancing, we are going to propose a way for a system to be built, hopefully to have some type of public-private partnership for transactions to take place on that platform. And essentially, we are going through the process. As I said, we're starting with stakeholder engagement, but that is as specifically as it deals with getting a system for land registry.
Thank you, team, and I wish you well with the e-conveyancing, because I know that is very critical to getting people in houses, and we truly living up to our moral responsibility of how we house people in this country. So thank you, through you, Mr. Minister, to you and the team, and keep pushing on. Brother.
Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable Minister, thank you also for your enlightening opening on housing. Let me get straight to the heart of the matter. I am aware that land is being acquired at 40 acres, St. Thomas. I'm planning for the delivery of housing solutions have been promised. And there were 80 lots under that project. This project has had a long and varied past. Expectations have been excited indeed. My colleague next to me, in a different incarnation, may have been the minister when that land was acquired. And at the same time, anxieties have been heightened, particularly by the residents in the Allen View community. Now, St. Thomas is one of those parishes in Barbados that has not had a lot of housing development from the state. And for various reasons, it's mainly a rural agricultural parish. And finding land for housing may not necessarily be the most suitable parish because of that. Now, I want to ask, when can the project be started? Because there are a number of residents within the Allen View community who have been notified that they may or may not have to move because of their proximity to the dome of the Harrison Cave. And a lot of work has been done in relation to the geotechnical studies in the Allen View area and in the dome of the Harrison Cave. And those residents have for a long time not been allowed by the planning authorities to improve their homes, do further construction or development. Families with land have been prohibited or restricted from building on that land. And therefore, a lot of the housing stock in Allen View has not been improved because of those restrictions, notwithstanding the fact that people have access to land. And 40 acres has been developed as a site to relocate some of those residents. And also, indeed, to provide housing solutions for the public in general, but I would dare say the needs of the St. Thomas community in particular. So I am asking when can the project in 40 acres, what stage is it at, and when can it be started as a means to provide housing solutions to the people in the community? Thank you.
Honourable Member, your predecessor agitated on behalf of the residents of Allen View, and I'm glad to hear that you have taken the baton and you are equally as passionate agitating on their behalf. And you are very correct in the parish of St. Thomas, given that it has a lot of agricultural land, that the needs of the country obviously must be balanced between housing and food production. With that said, I would like to invite Mr. Raymond Lord to give you an update on 40 acres.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and parliamentarians again. 40 acres has been on the drawing board since I came to National Housing in about 2012. It was held back because of the same challenge of the dome that was especially for relocation. And then there were some other mitigating factors. It's actually developed in 3 phases. There's the first phase along the southern road that has a number of 500 lots that were available, and then there's the eastern road that has another set of lots that are available. We were instructed not to dispose of those lots until further directions were given. We have gone back 3 times and done an interior design for the remaining lots. That's about 45 lots, if I remember correctly, where we actually put in some quads and some townhouses and some single lots. When the project is going to start, we will have to sit with our colleagues at Hope and see the framework for the finance. But we do have a design system in place, a planning concept for the infrastructure, road designs in place. So we have to look at the budget for it to see when it will start. But there are some lots that are immediately available for every location becomes a push that we will get the special release that is required to utilize those lots.
Chair, I'm not sure I got an answer to my question about when can it start. But I would take it that so I just want some indication as to when it could start. And Chair, I hope that is not my second question in relation to 40 acres. Because I don't think
Do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I have a follow-up question.
Is that your follow-up question?
In relation to the 40, yes. But I'm not sure I got a specific answer. If you can't give a specific answer, that is fine, but I just want to be able to say something to the people.
Mr. Chair, if I just a follow-up quick, you would realize that I would have mentioned a number of development sites that are ranked where we are going next. Hope will have mentioned that they're moving to Branchbury. We are working at Concordia. We are scheduled to go to Decorus next, and we are scheduled to go finish up at Coconut Hall and one other site. What we can do is look at our financial arrangements and see if it is possible to expedite that site. But we have done a ranking in terms of where we think we are able to go because of the availability of funds to do the infrastructure. Because what we are doing within the Ministry of Housing now is practically flipping the infrastructure funds from site to site. We complete a site, we sell off, we now internalize the cost, and we send that funds to another site. Hope is also doing that. National Housing, when we do our housing, we have to do that with them. So while that site is there, as we will look through, we'll take guidance from our minister, and we will try to see how best we can fit it into the rollout. Remember that the housing program covers 5 years. So while many of persons will wish to be in the first 2, 3, there are some sites that are scheduled, if I remember correctly, to be probably towards the 4th year. Because it's 20,000 houses over 5 years. So I'm pretty sure you were somewhere originally in the 3rd year to the 4th year in our initial thought process.
that would mean that a project that started in 2012, by your estimation, you should get around to 40 acres in about 2031.
The project started in 2012, and again, there are many issues coming out there because the land was specifically settled for the persons on the dome. Now, when that matter is settled, we are now able to utilize it. We are now able to utilize it. When I came to understanding that was to be for that purpose, for the issue of Allen View, and then there were some funds to come that were to be brought to do the infrastructure. That's the best answer I can give you at this point on that matter. But we did do it in two phases where there was a strip along one road, a 500 lot, and there was another 500 lot strip that we were able to get out. The interior, which was to have the heavy injection of funds out of the relocation, became another matter. So there's some sites that we will develop that would have come out of relocation funds. I don't think we were able to strategize to do that one then.
My understanding is that it was always supposed to be some lots being made available and also some housing solutions, because I am aware that the landowner of the majority of the land in that area has already started the process of developing the land in 40 acres. So that the immediate solution, as I am understanding it, has two components: a housing development part, but there's also a portion that was designed to provide lots for persons to build on. So that I'm not understanding why the two are now being coupled or, together.
The 500 lots were made available, and then there was a further directive to hold on those. Because of various things, I can't go into that here. There was a directive, and I follow directives very carefully. I'm a public officer. So those were held. Then the interior of the development, which would allow us to do the larger project for Allendale, that is linked to relocation funds, and that's a cross-ministry activity. And that, the other part of the ministries that support that has to be settled. That is now apparently settled. So what we can do, as I said, as we are doing estimates, we can put a projections of when we will bring all these lands to bear. Let me say that one of the projections in the housing, 10,000 house project, 20,000 actually, has, for one company, approximately about 600 acres to develop. That is a large financial investment, and we have to manage our outflows of cash in order to bring it to bear. As I said earlier, we are trying to meet every parish, every constituency where we can, but we have to manage the monies carefully. So we will look at the project with our minister and we see how we can assist as best we can.
Honourable Member, I can assure you that 40 acres will be used has been earmarked for a joint venture with NHC. And we're going to start with about 32 houses for next year. So you can have a good starting point there and something that you can tell to your constituents, sir.
Yes. Chair, I have a follow-up. As I indicated, there's an existing community in 40 acres right now. And if you know the area well, you will realize that on that main artery going up Highway 2, it is a community that is kind of cut off from the rest of the parish. But in housing developments in rural areas, they add pressure to existing communities because normally there are no green spaces, there are no community facilities, there are no playing fields, there are no pastures or what's not for those communities. And right now, children play in the road, literally in the road. And it is safe because you come off Highway 2, go into the community, into 40 acres, you drive about 200-300 meters in. So it's safe right now for people, well, not there's not a high volume of traffic. But there is an absence of any community facilities, recreational facilities in that community. With the pending development to the northwestern part of the community, further up in 40 acres and going further north to the west in what we will call Ham Pond. As you know, the development in Countryside, Vaughtlow, Shop Hill, Grandview, that's all coming on. So if there is further housing, it's going to create added pressure for the people in the community. Now, the nearest facility is at Bridgefield, which is several miles away, or at Wexmore Hall. So how do you foresee this government adding all these potential housing between now and the next 3-4 financial years to a community that is already also currently under pressure, having no community-based facilities, no recreational facilities? I'm wondering whether or not there's any plans to develop the further development intended by government and the National Housing Corporation and the other private developers, and the developers who own land, or the landowners who own land who have already had permissions to build more housing. So you can create about another 200 housing solutions, private and government, over the next 5 years, but without any adequate consideration for the development of recreational facilities. That's going to put a lot of pressure on the community. It's going to make the roads unsafe now for the children to play in. And it would create some social tensions because now people don't have a place to go and to let off. And it is not alone. There are other areas in the parish that have no facilities at all. And so I'm asking now, what considerations are being given to the development of recreational facilities in a community like 40 acres that is literally cut off from the rest of the parish, and whether there's any thought for planning obligations to be used by the government to be imposed on the developers, not only the ones that work with government, but also those who are able to exploit the lands and develop the lands and in the immediate area to create those recreational facilities, given the recent changes that were ushered in the legislation. Because those planning obligations could now create the recreational spaces, the green spaces, the social cohesive spaces within the parish that would not have to trouble you to go acquire more land or to ask the Minister of Finance to provide funding for the Honourable Member for St. John or to build out those community facilities. Because we can't just build houses and then have people living in a new housing development, and then the children, young people, there's nowhere to recreate, there's nowhere to line this, and so that is a big concern, because they're also going to have to deal with traffic and increased traffic in those spaces.
What is the question?
So the question is, what plans, whether there are any plans, Mr. Chairman. I started with the question first, and then give the explanation.
Honourable member, I listened very keenly to you. You were talking about 40 acres, and then you move into recreation. Now, I am trying to link the two.
No, Mr. Chairman,
to get your question.
The question is, given there's planning development going on in 40 acres, both by government and the private sector, and there's the absence of any recreational facility in 40 acres right now, what plans do we have to build out green spaces and recreational spaces and community centers for the people in 40 acres, given that there's no close in proximity any current facilities there, and whether or not the use of planning permit and planning obligations might be a way in which we can achieve that if there's no current plans to build out those green spaces or recreational spaces.
And that is connected.
We're still in 40 acres, so it is, I would say it is not disconnected, but we haven't moved to 40 acres.
but we move into recreation.
Yeah, but we're talking about planning and housing, and you can't build a house if the chair rules, like chair rules, but you can't build a housing development in a community without those spaces for people. And if you're increasing and doubling the amount of houses in the area, it's going to have an impact, a social impact. So I think I am on the ball, Chair.
Honourable Minister, answer.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And I can speak to the green spaces because any development that we go forward with, the planning and design will incorporate green spaces. I can tell you that. We're going to do that in Hinesbury. We can do that in 40 acres. We are going to do that in any development going forward. We will play our part with green spaces. I know that the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central in his former capacity did an excellent job in greening the place. In regards to the community center, I will leave that to the best sports minister ever in the history of our country to deal with. But we can deal with the green spaces. I would like Raymond to chime in a little bit on this. He understands this very well, that any design going forward will incorporate this.
It's good afternoon again. We actually go a bit further in our master plan designs than green space. We actually have 3 subdivisions developed that actually have bike tracks slated to be in them. Bright Hall has one, Lower Burney has one, and we are working to develop one at Concordia on the eastern space. So we go a bit further out of the previous manifesto, which asks for hiking trails and walking tracks be part of subdivision with a healthy life. The Floralis Gardens Bullings development is supposed, if I can get my good PS friend to agree, to have what is called an adult play park, where you can have exercising going on. We hope you can get that in. The 40-acre spot area is slightly smaller, slightly more compact, and when the early designs hasn't a small green space, we might be able to translate that again to a physical activity space where people go and exercise. What we are trying to do with the green spaces is just not have a green space. Because in some cases, with the new Planning Act, you have to transfer it to a mandatory entity or we retain it. We are thinking in our minds that it must become a bit more useful and maybe active. So we'll be researching and looking at the costs through our colleagues at the NCC and things like that, whether or not we can put in exercise equipment and that kinds of things where people can come out on afternoons and be active. So while you have the beautiful green space, where it's have to cut it alone, we think we can go a bit beyond that and make them into active spaces. Because every time you just leave the green space and be transferred by persons owning it, we find that sometimes comes the area who's cleaning it, who's joining the community to do it. The new Plan Act takes care of that a bit, and the other Environmental Act. But every area that we do, depends on the size, if it's over 22 lots or 18 lots, depending on what land we have, we put in a small space where people can exercise. And hopefully, we can partner, sir, with other ministries who have fundings available and willing to come on and partner with us and put in equipment and let the communities use it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lord. In your answer to me about the green space in 40 acres and the general policy, I was just wondering if you could ask about green spaces in other places, Mr. Chairman.
Not at this time, Honourable Member. You have one question and you do your fault. Not at this time. You can come back, Honourable Member.
I will craft a better segue the next time.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central.
Thank you, Chair. It's just one question. Minister, I know that your officers would have reiterated on more than one occasion this morning and throughout the importance of having resilient housing. I know your ministry has sought to be involved in their project. Because resilient housing for me, based on disaster-prone areas, is not only about flooding and slippage, as we heard earlier from other members. To me, it is also the resilience in terms of wind gusts. And you alluded to Hurricane 5 wind speeds. We must now be able to build houses based on design to be able to resist these vagaries. What is your ministry doing in terms of, I know that you have a project and you can elucidate on it, with truss anchors and rafter connectors where members of the public can access these basic things to be able to help secure roofing when there is high wind. But I believe as your ministry is the fulcrum for housing development in this country, I think that you should be the leader as it relates to getting this information out to the public in terms of resilient housing. So it's not only for you to ensure that it's done within your housing stock, but also so that members of the public outside of your ministry can appreciate what needs to be done as it relates to resilient housing. So first you can extrapolate on your project, and then let us know the avenues that the general public can have in terms of the outreach so that they can be informed about from foundation levels in terms of how to mitigate flooding, storm water, surges, all those things. How does your ministry intend to have this information being dispensed to the public? Thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And those are excellent points. Resilience in our housing stock is obviously mission one, along with affordability. And any housing development that we erect will be designed to Category 4 at least, whether it's the East-West program, the Juravilla program, any ventures that we enter into with Hope or the NHC, that is the minimum design that we will have for our housing. Now, you mentioned about education. I know that the Ministry of Home Affairs takes the lead on that, but what we can do in the ministry is that a lot of people don't know that the Barbados Building Code is the strictest building code in the region, and other countries have adopted elements of our building code as well. And this story obviously needs to be told, and I've had many conversations with the Honourable Prime Minister on this, that we need to somewhat enforce elements of it. It is actually so strict that there's developers that don't believe that they can build anything affordable under this building code, but we can certainly look at ways that we can pare it down, still to Cat 5 resilience, but such that we can educate the developers that we partner with, but then the wider Barbados, we can also seek a way to be able to disseminate these building codes so that we can ensure that obviously we will lead by example, but that other entities, private entities that are going to develop housing, that they are held to those standards of resilience as well.
And to follow up, there's a project, and I know that you are a modest minister, but you have a project in your ministry that allows the public to have access to rafter connectors, truss anchors. And that project has been ongoing for quite some time so that they can secure their homes and their roofs. I want you to just let the public know about the project and how they can access these things, because I know that you're doing tremendous work as it relates to that.
Yes, you're very correct, Honourable Member. We call it Strap It. and we had distributed a number of those devices that they can secure the roofs. That program was, I think, done through the housing planning unit, I believe. PS, I'm going to hand it over to you.
This traffic project is funded. The monies are held by the Ministry of Housing, but the Ministry of Home Affairs through its DEM requests the equipment whenever they're required, since they do all of the outreach to get persons to put the straps onto their houses. The other project that the Honourable Member was mentioning had to do with something that we had looked at previously when we were going to design joints, different types of joints for roofs that would allow them to be more resilient, agree the angles. That was done between the Ministry of Transport and Works and the building unit. When the building unit was there, the parts are still held by the Building Standards Authority, unit, so that if someone wants to make sure that their roof is going to be structurally sound, the building standards will assist them in getting the right connections so that it will be able to withstand a hurricane.
All right. Just to be absolutely sure, and because the public is in earshot of this discussion, you're saying that the truss anchors and rafter connectors, and those that project in particular is done through the outreach of the Ministry of Home Affairs, through the District Emergency Management Department. That's what you're saying. And then it comes to your ministry.
Well, STRAPE is done through the Ministry of Home Affairs, but that is when you're just putting on hurricane straps on the roof. We provide the funds, the Ministry of Home Affairs implements.
Okay.
Right.
All right, thanks.
Honourable Member for St. George North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the onset, I should like to say that my question relates generally to the length of time and the perceived urgency that matters before the national housing will take. I do recall, Mr. Chair, being in this honorable chamber on the last occasion that we were able to entertain members of the Ministry of Housing and Well, and raising some very important questions around the time frame that there was for the transfer of title to residents of the glebe, the transfer of title of residents in parish land, the transfer of title to those in the housing units in Flat Rock. And in terms of urgency, I won't have to touch on the whole issue of ELSA because I believe that my colleague in St. George South spoke about it, although I thought that I was the only body in St. George South left with ELSA houses owed for completion, rather by repair or rebuild. But I wish that the minister, through you, Chair, to the minister, wish for the minister to be able to respond specifically to the time frame. And I do not want a response that is in the present continuous, that we are working or we are hoping or we are in the process of. I would wish for the ministry to respond specifically to the time frame that there is to complete the transfer of title to those residents in glebe land, many of whom have completed, paid in, can show receipts, but still can't get connections to utilities and so on because the transfer of title is not complete, to those in the parish lands that are awaiting relocation, and of course to those who are in the housing units in Flat Rock, who have heard other areas identified for transfer of title to be complete, but who have not heard the Flat Rock units mentioned. So specifically those.
Thank you for your question, Honourable Member. I would like to invite Ms. Nicole Johnson to address the glebe and parish land issues. And then with the Flat Rock units, I would invite the CLO of NHC to address that issue.
Good afternoon. With respect to the glebe St. George, I will like to pass that question on to the legal officer, National Housing Corporation, because they work on the conveyancing, being the diocesan trustees, and for those tenants who would have been in the NHC as the attorney at law, so she'll be able to explain to you what are the challenges that they will be facing. In terms of parish lands, St. George, the lands were acquired and the process has to continue. I would then ask the PS thereafter to expand further on what needs to actually do actual transfer to the tenants.
Okay. In relation to the glebe, I had earlier mentioned about timelines and persons not keeping timelines. This is a clear example in this instance. NHC is not the vendor. We are the attorneys at law for the purchasers. So we rely on the attorneys for the vendor to give us the necessary documents in order to proceed and advance the matter. Unfortunately, in this instance, we have 61 matters, and we are still awaiting 54. There are draft conveyances we are awaiting. There are 3 instances where some of the qualified tenants have died, and so they will need to get the necessary letters of administration or letters testamentary to be issued so we can convey to the estate once they would have submitted the necessary Form 1 notices. So this is one where we continue to follow up, but it is indeed a lot of delay in getting these matters completed. In relation to the issue of Flat Rock, further to discussions with the ministry, NHC had made certain recommendations to have additional estates added to the list of designated estates currently where we transfer title. So that is in progress, and management and by extension the board will deal with that and follow up with the ministry in relation to those additional estates.
Yeah, parish lands St. George, those lands have now been acquired. And we are, though you don't want to hear, we are in the process of having the individual lots confirmed because they were surveyed several years ago. People have changed their boundaries, houses have come in. So we have to confirm that the plans that we did in 2002 are still valid, or we will have to do some amendments to the plans, at which point we can send out offer letters to the persons. They're going to be able to purchase at, and I hope someone tells me that it is $250 per square foot, because it is not a plantation tenantry, so it's basically a large private tenantry, so they're going to purchase at $2.50 per square foot in those offer letters. And we should hopefully be able to complete before the end of 2026-27, before the end.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the minister and his team, I'm sure that one will reasonably appreciate why the responses, in my opinion, don't seem to answer the question. And if it is that the Ministry of Housing is unable to answer the question, I believe that then that should be communicated. When we received responses to the same question relating to parish land last year, I was told that it was to be completed by the end of that financial year. And now we're being thrown into the end of 2026, 2027. And what the answers did well on is to give content about the cost of the land and the process. But, Mr. Chair, like you and others in this honorable chamber, have to face people. And recently, in a season where some refer to it as the silly season, and the pressure mounts when you have to face people and give them the same story over and over as it relates to the transfer of title and the fact that National Housing is not the vendor. I will have to rely on the expertise of others in this honorable chamber because I hold my lane. But in these matters, would it be customary or appropriate for the National Housing, the Ministry of Housing, to simply say we're waiting? Or is there a process where the legal work can be done for both sides by the National Housing or so? So I would wish to have clarity around whether this is the best that can be done as it relates to the transfer title at the glebe. And I must register that I am highly dissatisfied with the response as it relates to timeline for the parish land, and I do not believe that I heard the time frame for the units at Flat Rock. I heard a response, but I did not hear the question being responded to as it relates to time frame.
Honorable member, your concerns is noted, and I would invite you to speak to the minister on a one-on-one basis who should direct you. I don't think we could.
Respectfully, Mr. Chair, the response is not for me. The response is for the people who are concerned. And while I can do that, I do not believe that it is fair for that pressure to be put on this honorable member, where we have an entire team in the chamber that should be able to say, and as I noted before, if there is no better answer that can be given, say that there's no better answer that can be given so that the expectation is not there and the pressure is not on this honorable member to deliver something that she's unable to.
While I understand you clearly, honorable member, I can also advise you that you can set a meeting in the constituency with the same personnel to be able to deal with these questions frontally.
It was done already, sir.
Honorable member, I would like to invite the GM to give your response on Flat Rock.
In respect of Flat Rock, and so that the question is not asked again, in respect of Deanston and St. James and Bushall and St. Michael, there is need for amendment to be done to the Act. A draft board paper, which I'm reading now, has been prepared for the next board meeting of the National Housing Corporation. This has come out of the fact that I've listened to the MPs, St. Andrew, St. George, and I think it is St. Michael's Central. I think it's Central. It could be Central. But I've listened to the advice of others. The fact that these are not included in Schedule 1 of the Act. None of the three are. In order to get this done, there must be an amendment to the Act and a new schedule, a Part 2 schedule has to be included now for the three of these to be accepted. Once that is done, I know that Bushall has been surveyed, but none of the other two has been surveyed as yet. So we will have to survey Flat Rock and Deanston to bring them into the body. But once that is completed, the whole story of just the fact that you're one-time homeowner or first-time homeowner and so on will count. And once those persons fit the bill, they too will be added to the transfer program. This is going to the board within the month of March. First board meeting is in March. And after that, it should go to the ministry for a cabinet paper to be done to come to cabinet. So I could say within the next quarter, we should be having some positive outlook on Flat Rock.
Thank you. I will not press further except to say that last time around, which is now a year ago, we received information that Flat Rock was going to be put on the schedule, but at least now I have a timeline that it will go to the board in March. And next time, should I have to ask the question again, I won't only be able to say that it's being put on the schedule, I will be able to say, but you said that it was going to be put on the schedule within weeks by the end of March. Hope the people of St. George North are following.
Honourable Member for St. Michael East.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My thoughts shift a lot in this debate when I hear people talking about building codes, and I'm talking about low-income people build shallow houses, and talking about NHC units for people who live on the social rims of society, and understand clearly that housing is a human right. And therefore the state has to take some responsibility as well. The state is producing houses that if you had to apply a building code to those houses, the state will be found guilty. They're building houses without back doors. They're building houses that are leaking. People have to run out in the middle of the night. People don't have any say in if they want the type of house that they're forced to live in because they want somewhere to live. And I think that the philosophy that should guide you as the National Housing Corporation, more so in particular, is how do you treat to the needs of poor people? That is the basis of the foundation of the NHC, which was the Housing Authority originally, is to build houses for poor people. Poor people now forced to live in houses that got one door after all the experiences that we have had. I have units, and I'm speaking from a foundation exclusively of parochial matters within my constituency itself. I have housing in Barker's Road, which the people were forced to upset because they wanted a roof to live under. While living in the houses, brown water is coming off the top floor and running into the bottom floor, not once, not twice, far over far over what I would consider to be reasonable. I want to know what, and what is worrying me, these are not houses even constructed by us, models not even constructed by us, but we're forced to take them for whatever reason. I don't want to talk about just unfriendly relationships between sovereignties and things of that nature. I am talking about what people must endure if they want somewhere to live. I want to know what is the NHC doing about those houses. If the boss don't want to talk about it, I'm talking about it. What is the NHC doing about the houses in Barker's Road, 2nd Avenue, Haggett Hall, that there are multiple problems, both latent and patent defects in the construction of those houses, I can't talk about building codes because it sounds like I'm talking about people who are alien forces. I talking about ordinary local people. They don't even know building code. You build the houses. You got to be able to tell these people why they have to accept houses like that. And I cannot hear about any urgency in relation to how you're going to rectify the problem. So that is a question. I don't know if you want me to put a question mark behind it too, sir, but that is a question that I would like to pose to the minister and the staff of the NAC.
Honourable Member, thank you for that question, and we have spoken on this issue, both you and I, and you and your personal assistant, and I'm very aware of the issues that persist in Barker's Road. And my concern, obviously, is with structural integrity. So we have hired an engineering firm to assess that. In terms of the build quality, the NHC will address those issues. I know that they're vexing to you, and we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we can fix these issues for you. I would like to invite the GM to speak more specifically on the remedies.
Thank you, Minister. In respect of the houses at Barker's Road, they would have been handed over to the National Housing Corporation just around 2 to 3 years ago. And there have been constant problems. And the thought of how we are to deal with this, the engineering firm has come in because we've seen some strengths, we've seen some weaknesses, and we know that there are some issues that we will face. We've asked an engineering firm to look at from the ground sill right up to see what the issues are and what do they think is the fix to those issues. We're hoping to have an answer back from them soon, but there are quite a few across the country, and as they travel, they will come up with what they think would be the fix for these Chinese houses, because I believe you're speaking about the Chinese houses. So we are hoping that we'll have a fix for them soon. We've noticed the challenges with them. We've seen the challenges with them. So we are hoping soon that we can look to solve it would cause a few dollars more, but we will have to make it right so that the tenants can bring some comfort to their lives.
As I said, this is a right to housing, and I would expect when they say the right to housing, they're talking about houses or so-called houses which were constructed for a specific purpose. And if the purpose, nobody cannot witness the conditions that constitute what is the purpose, I believe you know that you have a problem. And I'm telling you that the ordinary people in the street understand that there's a problem. And if they tell you what the problem is, I don't even know why you have to wait on an expert to come in to tell you this is the problem. The problem is clear. No doors at the back. If anything, I'll tell you the story. A narrative probably will make you understand better. There's a lady of a certain size who got up one morning and tried to get out of the house to meet 8 o'clock. And the lock would not open. It is only an example, but it is happening to more than one person. And she had to stay inside the house until after 10 o'clock, when NHC sent somebody to the house to open it. The problem is sometimes is that too many people want to defend an institution and don't even understand that the institution is made up of the people who work within it, not the building itself. And when you're talking to people, people are always trying to defend this abstraction called institution. The institution is the people that work within the building. And you need to respond swiftly And I don't even want to discuss this thing about this open-ending approach to we will do it soon or we will do it a little later down and these strange abstractions. Anyhow, I also want to tell you that if I have any say, I would not like to see one more model of that type built in St. Michael's East. And I'm echoing the feelings of the people right across my constituency. You have a parcel of land adjacent to that, and I've received a promise now for 2 elections that you will be building on the other side. I don't know when is the date for the commencement on the construction on the other side, but please don't bring those things that you have there, that you're given the honor of calling them houses for low-income people. Don't bring them, please. That was just the follow-up questions. There is...
Honourable member, you use your follow-up time. You have limited time.
Okay, well, allow me to use the limited time that is available now.
The time has expired.
There's a... Okay, this is a short question.
Please.
There's 23, 24 houses in a place that the community call Hollywood. It's in Barker's Road as well. These units were built on private land by private landlords years ago. We've sent in 1 million applications under the Temporary Freehold Persons Act. And we've had meetings all in the middle of the street, to the west sometimes, and to the east, and in the middle of the street for the satisfaction of the people there. Everybody had great expectations that the ownership would have been transferred. The effort is made under the Temporary Freehold Persons Act. But I don't know what is happening, but there's some invisible obstacle that stands in the way of the transfer, the ownership of the land. Could you do your best to try to see if you can expedite the transfer? I don't even want to know if it's a ghost. I just want the transfer done. The people are vexed, angry with me because they don't see you. So I would like you to do your best for me to ease the burden of the member of St. Michael's East. You stopped me from giving a man a sow.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I give the assurance to you that we will investigate this situation. Let me see if I can invite Ms. Nicole Johnson to speak on it, if she has any information for you,
I
Honourable
just
Member.
want to say, I was in land. I have made sure I did the required research about him even before he was born.
All right, we'll get back to you, Honourable Member, on that.
Honourable member for St. Michael Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honourable Minister and your team, good afternoon to each of you. I know that I think this is your first time in the well of Parliament, I believe, and I hope that our colleagues have been kind to you. But I think you would appreciate that housing is one of those issues that becomes very emotive for a lot of people. You know, I have a saying that the people who draw a salary every month do not sometimes appreciate when people don't get paid, because a lot of times it's not hitting them directly. Equally, sometimes when you have climbed the ladder and you have a roof over your head, you may not appreciate fully or not have the tools to be able to certainly address the issues of housing that are facing certainly us as MPs within the country. I prefer this afternoon to not take the approach of simply being parochial, to ask questions mainly about my constituency. but rather to reflect on the estimates, which is why we are really here, and to really question, based on everything you've said, Minister, and your team so far in this debate, whether in response to questions asked or whether in response to, in your overview of where the ministry seeks to go. But really, I would want to question whether these estimates truly reflect that the ministry has the necessary resources to be able to carry out the magnitude of the works that are required. And I start there because we can all 30 of us in this place can certainly ask from, St. Lucie to St. Philip questions regarding individual housing estates. We can ask you questions regarding the transfer of title. We can dig deep, and perhaps at times we may sound a little critical of perhaps works not moving fast enough. But I think that these estimates also speak to a bigger issue of whether, with the level of development that we've seen across the country, the constant piling up of additional work on the National Housing and the wider Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, whether these estimates truly reflect a ministry that has the adequate resources to be able to carry out the works that a 2026 Barbados is now requiring. We are mindful that, I have one of the largest housing estates. I say every time I speak in these debates and in every opportunity I have. So I am fully aware of the issues that plague the National Housing Corporation. All of you who sit in here in the ministry are well aware of my voice calling you. But I am concerned that if we relate to the housing estate situation, that perhaps there was a time when the works were being done internally, and then you started to look externally for contractors to be able to do those works. Do these estimates reflect that you, in those situations, have the adequate resources to oversee those independent contractors? Do these estimates also reflect that you have sufficient legal resources, either in-house or externally, to be able to provide you with the resources to respond to the conveyancing issues? I think it was the legal officer who spoke to a situation where, in some cases, there are issues regarding title. We know what the issues are, but perhaps what a legal department, whether in-house or externally, needs to now look at is, if it doesn't have enough resources in-house, are there other avenues for being able to solve some of the problems of ownership of houses? Because we've all for decades heard the concerns that, people cannot get titles sorted out. So does that mean that we deprive them of the opportunity to have adequate housing, or to have houses rebuilt, repurposed, and being able to maybe have a fund where those monies are held while they get their act together? Does it mean that we don't look at perhaps having a situation where there is funding perhaps to allow title to be sorted out, so that you at the NHC certainly are in a position to be able to better get those houses back on the market? I think we can go around in circles in terms of what all the issues are, but do these estimates truly reflect for you in the Ministry of Housing the adequacy of human resources, of project managers, of surveying teams, in terms of all of the things that are necessary, the engineers to be able to do these surveys, the land surveyors to be able to look at these sites? Do you really adequately have the resources? And perhaps when you finish answering that question, I may not have to ask anymore.
Thank you, Honourable Member. It is a very, very good question. On the first day that I stepped foot into the ministry, I think the PS did tell me that the National Housing Corporation and the ministry has, like the rest of Barbados, an aging population. And there are a lot of individuals, key individuals, who will be going on retirement this year. In fact, I think the honourable gentleman to my left is also scheduled to go on retirement at the end. I'm hoping that we can bring him back. But yes, we do have a significant issue in terms of getting the required staffing levels. A lot of it is because we have a lot of retirements. It may be a good and bad problem for me in that I could get people some work, but at the same time, we are at risk at losing the institutional knowledge that is required for the complexities of this ministry. So you're very correct. And you know, in addition to that, yes, we need more surveyors, but that is mostly a money issue. I think one of the reasons why the Honorable Prime Minister directed us at the NHC to enter into more joint ventures is because of this issue where we have been inadequate in the past at delivering at pace. It's not that we can't deliver, but as you just so rightly said, there are a lot of issues in the estates. And we have been, as such, outsourcing a lot more in terms of the engineering that's required to do those transfers that you spoke about. In addition to that, we also outsource the legal services in order to do the conveyancing. So in some respects, it is a money issue, and in some respects, yes, it is a human resources issue, which we have to face. We have to face it head on. We have to bulk up to be able to be up to the task, to meet the challenges and the needs of the Barbadian public in order to even have a chance at trying to ease that backlog of 4,000 plus people. We really need to step up to the plate. So it is my cross to bear. And we've had many conversations, an honorable member, about this same issue. And obviously, in your constituency, given that it's the largest housing estate in Barbados, I do understand that these issues do impact you greatly, and other honorable members as well. So human resources, even the productivity within our workforce are issues that we have to address as well. Workplace wellness is also something that under my leadership, we're trying to, implement, because we know that when people are healthy and working healthy working conditions, they can be more productive. So we can increase productivity in our workforce so that we can get the most out of what we have while we address the other issues. In the meanwhile, we can do some outsourcing. We have some pretty lofty targets to make. I'm fully aware of this, but I can assure you that we'll give it our best shot, and we will look to see where, in those instances, we need to beef up. In those places where it will really matter, like the surveying, like the engineering, and these sorts of things. We also face the challenge of a lack of skills out there. And as such, obviously, we will have to look in other places as well, too. So we have to look to our partners in Africa and in the CARICOM, so that where we have deficits in skills in certain areas, that we can beef up those shortages as well. So that in a nutshell is it. P.S. You have any further comments you'd like to add?
Thank you, Minister. These estimates basically represent what we have gotten in years gone by, and what we hope to add to that, even though it is not sufficient. For example, we've added new buildings to our insurance schedule. We've put on the new geriatric hospital, the new agricultural college that is in St. Lucie. All those have gone on. Therefore, our insurance is going up. We've lost officers, and the truth is we've lost officers not because they were tired of us, but they've gone to other ministries, and we haven't had replacements for the most part. So we get funds, we lose staff, there's rotation, maybe there's not enough training being done that we getting enough people to keep the organization going. The one standout for us right now is that Lands and Surveyors has been very good in what it does and has been helping other ministries do their work. And they help us at the ministry to look good as well. And we can see their information, we can see land registry information. It is all there as we digitize, but we have to get to the point where we are fully digitized. We don't need as many humans, but we have all the resources that we need. Land registry is working on what the Prime Minister requests, that we speed up conveyancing, but there's a process to be gone through. They have to stabilize the existing system, and then the recommendation requires a lot of staff to bring all of that information into an electronic manner that we will then be able to work quickly and transfer lands quickly. So we ask for funds, we get what is available because the pie is only so big, and we therefore will do our best to produce for the people of Barbados with what we get, but we keep asking for more hands so that we get the work done.
Thank you, PSM Minister. I think your latter comment sums it up. We all know we get what we didn't ask for, and we are all asked to do with it the things that we can. And sometimes we therefore do not meet the targets for which we have been sent here to do. So I think all of us appreciate that those are some of the challenges of running a government. That said, though, when I think of, for instance, the Lower Burney project has been mentioned quite a bit by the officers, yourself, Minister. I believe when we were coming to office in 2018, this was a major project that was announced by the government at the time. And it came out of a solution to being able to solve densely populated communities, to be able to ease the pressure in communities where you have had a lot of criminal activity because the households are very dense and because there's not a lot of space within the community for even building out further. And that project came about as a result of a land swap. We were able to acquire the funding. Now, again, I say 2018, we are now in 2026. So the previous minister would have done some work to be able to advance the transfer, to be able to ensure that we were able to have the first phase, I believe, of the designs. I'm aware as well that the social survey, while not a complete survey of the Golden Rock and the surrounding areas, was actually started. And I believe there's some more work still to be completed in some other areas to make sure that you understand fully who you are easing the density in the constituency for. And this is I'm speaking of the 20 of the 40 acres that was supposed to be built out for low-income housing. The difficulty comes that 7 years later, we are still waiting. We've heard the announcement, the first phase of designs are completed. But the residents of the constituency, and certainly those who stand to benefit from the other 20 acres, are still awaiting the clear plan as to when they can be occupants of their own home. And I say this against a background that you need to perhaps point within these estimates to where are the funds specifically to projects like Lower Burney's and others, where it is clear to the public that not only do you have these projects that are going to benefit a wider population, but that there are some timelines that need to be met. Because all of us as representatives are challenged to be able to say exactly when these projects are going to happen. We kind of hear it the same way that it is announced by the public. And I think that what all MPs are asking for in their questions is a clarity as to which projects are priority, which projects are going to carry certain resources to be able to bring them to completion. And I think for the ministry, it is important that while you don't have all the resources that you want, that clarity is brought to bear certainly in these estimates so that we all know what to expect in this next financial year. When I look at your major works and renovations sub-program 518, for instance. I see here maintenance of property, for instance, $4 million approved estimates, 1.5 in the revised estimates. But then for this year, you have a total budget allocated of 6.7 million. Now it says to me that while you are projecting a 6.7, again, the only way that you're going to be able to accomplish this 6.7 is if you have the project managers, if you have the human resources, whether in-house or out-house, to deliver on this 6.7 in terms of the works that you have to do. And if you look at every budget within these sub-programs, within these heads, the question still has to be asked, how do you deliver on your well program? How do you deliver on your sewage program? How do you deliver on your electrical upgrade program if it's the same people within the corporation and the wider ministry doing the same work? So I think you owe it to us to be able to drill down on the Lower Bernice project specifically, but also on all of the projects, a clearer understanding as to what resources are being allocated to each of these projects so that we have some timelines that we can both hold you to, but also that the public is clear what are their expectations. How much longer will they have to live in the deplorable conditions that they are now living in before they can see light at the end of the tunnel?
Thank you, Honourable Member. And I can assure you that Lower Bernie is of tantamount priority for the ministry. We've spoken on this many times. We have the designs, and I am hoping that we can actually break ground this year on Lower Bernie. It has to happen. In terms of the monies towards the sewerage program, the electrical program, and these things, we know that there are certain estates that are worse than others, so we can prioritize there as well. I know that we do have in these estimates the purchase of a brand new sewage truck, which will aid us in actually servicing these sewage systems in the estates a lot more efficiently. I want to let the GM, though, comment on the electrical upgrade program and the resources necessary as stated in these estimates. GM?
The electrical upgrade program, as you are aware, would have been started. Simple reason that the older estates, those units that are more than 30 years old would have been under the phase one electrical system, and they had to be upgraded to a single phase 3-wire system. That has been done, and I'll get you some information now in respect of your area. We've had some allocations on that project, and be completed. The areas that are completed are Haynesville, Torps Gardens, Bargatel, St. Stephen's, Lamins, Manors, and Rosemont. And in respect of the Pine at Goldie, there are 70 units in progress at this present time, and there are 64 which have been completed but are waiting for Barbados Light and Power Company Limited for transition. I would have had this discussion previously where I believe that there are some extensions on, but as I said earlier this morning, a decision has been made by the board in respect of the extensions, so we will move towards doing those extensions, but firstly, we will have to get the paper ready for cabinet, so to get approval as to how we will do the funding. But for sure, we are the holdup of having persons waiting because other persons are not have illegal extensions. That will not occur anymore. We have work ongoing at Goldie, at Eden Lodge, at Deacon's Farm, Silver Hill, and in the Pinelands cluster. Is an issue with some of the work to be done in Pinelands, and the fact that some of the contractors are unable to get into certain areas to work, but outside of that, the project is progressing smoothly at this time. There are 2,315 units have been completed to date. 170 are presently in progress, and I would have stated 64 are at Goldie, and 2,021 units have been transitioned by Barbados Light and Power, and 193 units remain to be transitioned by Barbados Light and Power at this time. As I said, the transitioning of these 193 mainly depend on the extensions to be done. In some cases, there may be 8 units and only 2 extensions, but we're going to move towards having them done so the other persons who have been loyal in their effort and have not done anything illegal, that they too will be able to have the use of the new phase of electricity, which is critical because of the new type of electrical equipment that there is at this present time.
And as it relates to the sewage as well?
In respect of the sewage, at this present time, National Housing Corporation, we are only doing emergencies. And so if there is sewage that is flowing anywhere or there's any difficulty in respect of persons who are suffering from some situation where sewage is in their backyard or running in somewhere, we are dealing with those. One of the problems with sewage, I think it was in Ainsville, is that there are some carbon fiber pipes all throughout the estates that would have been put in, some in the 60s and 70s, that are now breaking down. And that is causing a serious issue. Yes, it is causing a serious issue. So we are preparing a paper for the board to send up to the ministry in respect of the fact that we now have to purchase 6 and 8 inch pipes, because the carbon fiber pipes are not lasting anymore. And the thing about when they break down, there's the area where they've broken down, then the sewage then runs all over the area. And I know that some of the MPs in this area would have had experiences and would have called, and we've done our best to try to solve as many of them. We've done it, yes. So now is the time that we have to move away because as you always hear, sewage for national houses in perpetuity, because the sewage is communal. So you will have 4 units, but only one well, or one area that is for the wells. So therefore, that's 4 units going to that one well. When one problem occurs at one house, it usually backs up into the other houses. So we are working towards that. Another problem that we have with sewage is that there are illegal extensions. We are speaking about the extensions now. Some are illegal and are placed on the existing sewage pipes. In fact, I've been to 1 or 2 homes where the sewage line passes through the front house, and in some cases through the bedrooms. And I mean, it's almost impossible. We've had to find ways and means of trying our best to deal with those matters. And we have, in most cases, done it. We've had to even go through other persons' properties in order to solve the issue of person putting up extensions and covering the whole area with concrete, and we not being able to dig up that concrete in the front, some person's front house or kitchen. So we've had to find ways of getting around that. So we do have issues. Our intention is to continue the program in the next financial year. I think just $1.5 million provided for sewage. So basically, we will be continuing to look at those areas that are challenged, especially those areas that have the carbon fiber pipes, and those are the ones that will take priority in the next financial year.
Thank you, Director. I think you have reinforced the same point that I'm trying to make, that none of us would want to see sewage being only responded to in an emergency situation. And therefore, I believe that the housing estates require a different type of intervention, one that is a bit more clinical, one that requires a strategic approach where we take into account that while you are building out areas like a Lower Burney and you have other projects under Hope and other areas available or becoming available, you need a strategy for dealing with the phasing out of the existing sewage pipes and the wells that are in those communities. And I feel like these estimates do not specifically reflect that urgency, because none of us like to wake up to calls that sewage is flowing through the streets of any community in this country, whether on the South Coast, where it was quickly corrected, or in communities where vulnerable people live. And I do believe that this has to stem from a philosophy of the ministry, where we take an approach that we need to stamp out these situations and be able to allow people to live in decent accommodation, both inside and outside in the units. My last question, though, relates to the Small Works program, or rather I term it the Small Works program, because while you are doing sewage and you're doing electrical upgrades. The reality is that many of these houses really are sometimes not fit for purpose. You have spalding, you have windows that are not properly sealed, you have doors that were built in the 1960s that have not been replaced. Many times when you seek the intervention of national housing, the concerns that are raised relate to the fact that the money hasn't come up, you've done the procurement, but these are not weeks of waiting, these are months of waiting. And again, while we know we cannot do everything, I believe that we need to have a small works program where if you can find them within the NHC, you find them in terms of the workers, but perhaps you need to find small contractors that can actually carry out the works across the estates. What though is required and perhaps is not reflected in these estimates is the oversight that the ministry and certainly NHC needs to provide for small works contractors. There are several people who work within the NHC who have the skill set that you may actually find you get a better day's work out of them if they are working independently. And therefore, I think that going forward, the estimates or perhaps your strategy has to be one which takes a different approach. We are now executing under RUDC what we consider small works projects in various communities. Perhaps that model of finding small contractors to do small things needs to be deployed by the ministry and in turn the National Housing Corporation so that we are not finding a situation where not only are you waiting on electrical upgrades to be done and you're waiting on the well that is leaking and emanating sewage to be addressed, but basic things that would make you comfortable in the house, that would stop water from coming in, that would allow the little old lady to be able to have a proper facility to step out of her house, that she's not stepping on a pavement that has not seen any paving from the time the house was constructed, or that we have not put railings to be able to stop people from falling, that these basic small things that will, in a sense, seek to address the day-to-day concerns that people have are properly being addressed. So my simple question to you, Minister, is do these estimates within the budget of NHC reflect an intention and an understanding of the philosophy that we do need to provide decent works while we do big works in your ministry to be able to make sure that those small things are being done whether in-house or externally? And do you have the adequate capacity to be able to oversee either of those initiatives?
Thank you, Honourable Member, and I think the key word that you use is oversee. So the NHC has to invest in project management. And given the shift to maintenance, we invest in the project managers, and as you just quite rightly said, they will oversee the contractors for those small works programs, all those vexing issues that you just outlined. So that is the methodology that me and the GM have had numerous conversations that we need more project managers within the NHC to be able to oversee all of these small things that are vexing to people in the estates, and obviously then as an MP of one of the largest estates, then, you know, you have to then, as the Honourable Member for St. Michael East said, they're seeing him, they're seeing you. So you will feel the brunt of this. GM, would you like to comment further?
Yes, we don't have the professional talent we have very limited talent at National Housing, respect of persons needed to manage that process. I've discussed it with the minister, and I'm very aware that the PS is aware of such. So we are looking as to how we can solve that problem and to extend, as the MP for St. George South earlier, extend the whole magnitude of the maintenance. And so that will include the additional cost for emoluments, because we do need additional staffing to complete the job properly. In respect of the private contractors, one of the issues that the private contractors even know with Hurricane Elsa is that once they've finished work, some of them, because they're small, cannot wait for excessive time to collect funding to pay their staff and so on. That's one of the problems and issues that we felt in under the Hurricane Elsa program. So yes, we do need additional finance. And if we bring in small contractors, we will certainly need additional finance. The work can be done. I'm certain that the team is, there's a team that we can start the work and so on. As I say, we do need professional staff. I know that the BS has promised me an architect and an engineer, so I'm looking forward for those. But we do need persons with the capacity to carry out many other functions that the National Housing Corporation, and as our mandate increase, we will necessarily need that quality of person or persons.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I beg to move that you do not report progress to His Honor the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
The question is that I do not report progress to His Honor the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honorable Leader, government business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 5 o'clock.
The question is that this honorable chamber be suspended until 5 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended until 5 p.m. This sitting is resumed. We continue with the debate on the Standing Finance Committee on the Appropriation Bill 2026.
This Honourable House is now in Standing Finance Committee. Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This question is not parochial like my first questions were, because all the work in the estimates are as outlined in the estimates. All the work done in our constituencies find their source of funding in the estimates, and so are capable of being addressed. But this one relates to my function as a minister of government. My team does not want me to allow the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance to leave the well without asking some questions that have been asked of the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance for many times. Now, the reason why we need to bring it here is because it is important for the public to understand some of the challenges that affect, for example, the delivery of labor justice. The Employment Rights Tribunal is set up to be the main artery for the dispensing of that justice. The Employment Rights Tribunal, while a full-time tribunal, has no home. It operates out of the Ministry of Labor, Ministry responsible for labor, and still has some challenges with respect to organizing meetings. Now, I know that some work has been done. I'm of the view, though, that we need to press the gas on this matter. The tribunal needs a home. There's also been the challenge we've had with respect to our ability to both give advice and to do inspections. So I'm referring now to the Labor Department. We have gotten approval for additional labor officers. The challenge that we're going to have as we fill those positions is, again, space. I'd like to find out from the minister and his team I'm not going to ask for a specific date. I don't think I should put you in that position. But I want to know what is being done, and I'm asking this on behalf of my team in the ministry, what is being done to expedite the process so that the Employment Rights Tribunal, that tribunal that adjudicates for relatives of every officer in this place today, what's happening, how is that going to be expedited, the provision of space for the tribunal to be able to properly execute its mandate?
Thank you, Honourable Member, for your question. I want to invite the Chief Property Manager to address.
Good afternoon. Dexter Mondesir, Acting Chief Property Manager. The space earmarked for the Employment Right Tribunal is currently occupied by the Customs and Excise Department. They will be moving out of that space this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. On Monday, the officers from the Property Management Unit will inspect the space. Drawings for the refurbishment of the space have been completed. The scope of works will be amended once we visit the space on Monday. I will allow Mr. Hines, the senior property manager, to speak on the refurbishment process.
Good evening, Brian Hines, Senior Property Manager acting at the Ministry of Housing. The procurement process for the contractor to do the outfitting work has started. We have requested those quotations. As soon as that process is completed, we will execute the renovation works to the space to tailor it to suit the needs of the ART, as we've had numerous meetings with them to create the necessary hearing rooms that are necessary. When the works are completed, they should be able to to have 3 hearings being conducted simultaneously within the space. And the fit-out works, we anticipate, should take about 6 weeks to complete. So I anticipate very early in the first quarter of the financial year, we will have a functioning space for the ART.
Thank you very much. No, you have provided the a kind of a date frame, and I'm just alerting the minister that we will be holding you and the ministry to that timeline. I asked it publicly because there is a public interest, and so holding you to that, if it doesn't come through, will also necessitate me saying it to the public, because justice and the dispensing of justice is something that is fundamental, critical to a well-ordered society. Thank you very much.
Honourable member for St. James South.
Thank you very much, Chair. In St. James South, and indeed is a problem, I think, across our nation, what we have is an aged population. And the implications for housing and the preservation of people's assets come into question because of their age, the continuing rise in the cost of living, the static nature of their pensions, and so the maintenance of their homes is a major problem. I watch this across my constituency. More than approximately half of just a little over half, are around the age of 60 and above. It is aged. And the ability to continue to repair their homes, to deal with the roof, etc., is a major challenge. By not being able to respond to it, it means what you have are a set of deteriorating assets that will impoverish not just that individual and their heirs, but the country at large, because then what you would have are assets that will be deteriorating in their worth. It is a major issue. It will have economic complications and implications for the Barbadian economy going forward. I know that we may not have looked at what we need to do, but if any thought has been given to what we need to do, because I heard you speaking earlier about the derelict housing. I'm saying that there's an intervention that needs to come in before, so they don't go to derelict, because they're much more expensive to deal with when they become derelict. And so I want to know if any thought has been given to how we're going to assist that group, and if not, would you all be willing to sit and work on some type of initiative that could help us, because that is going to be a major issue across the nation as our population continues to age.
Thank you, Honourable Member, and it's a very good question. What I can speak to is in our future plans and designs, we do incorporate certain features that are friendly to the elderly and disabled in all our designs going forward. I would have heard the Honourable Member from St. Michael South mention this before when he presented his suite of bills geared towards the elderly. And the truth is that we all are going to be elderly one day. And we don't all start out vulnerable, but we do. And I know that in the NHC, we are very mindful of this. And there are instances where we may keep ground level units available for those who are in the vulnerable group. I know that I've spoken to the department within the ministry which deals with the HIV/AIDS program, and they also are mindful about expanding their outreach and their stock within the housing estates to cater to those vulnerable individuals as well. So more work needs to be done because, as I said this earlier, that we are encountering an aging population, not only just in St. James South, but all over Barbados. So equally as we increase our housing stock to be more affordable and resilient, we also have to be mindful of our aging population and make sure that there are certain features within our designs that we can have that will also cater to this group.
I appreciate the effort in terms of providing suitable housing for them. But what I was aiming at is the need for us to develop an initiative that prevents that house from falling into disrepair and being able to come up with a program, whether it is, we were talking at first about reverse mortgages, but I understand that there are difficulties with that there are challenges with creating a reverse mortgage program. I'm just asking if we can, as a country, look at the possibility of creating some kind of initiative that would be able to assist them in preserving because it is property that their heirs could use or another generation could use rather than let it deteriorate. And so if that is at all possible, I would be glad if you could do that.
Honourable Member, to add, we all were beneficiaries of the program through the RUDC, with each constituency was given $200,000 to be able to do what the Honourable Members for St. Michael Southeast would coin as the small works. And I know that we also will be looking forward to that program continuing in our communities and being expanded. I would love for the National Housing Corporation and the Ministry to get a piece of that action as well, where we could also contribute to this in areas that will be deficient. So I will advocate for that as well, because we need, obviously, to have more hands on deck where this issue is concerned.
An additional question in relation to the issues of the quality of housing for seniors. The climate change has resulted in increasing heat. And with a number of elderly people who may have to be in a home, may not be as mobile that they could go outside and become cool and so on and so forth. One of the things that I think we need to consider as a country, when we do new builds, to look at the types of materials we're using, because those concrete blocks get very, very hot and they give off a lot of heat at night. So what you're doing in relation to new materials. But also I had done some research because I was very concerned about my seniors. And they had said that painting roofs white helps to reduce the heat within a home. And I discovered that we had providers here who actually have a special compound. What I want to know is if there are any plans in the ministry to look at what we need to do to help create cooler building structures that would allow for our seniors to be more comfortable in this very, very hot climate.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And I want to quote something that the Honourable Prime Minister has said, that the vaulted ceilings that the old people used to build back in the day with the windows high up because hot air rises. So they were, that design actually not only was hurricane resilient, but it also had the effect of cooling the house. So our elderly, they were also smart as well in the way they constructed their buildings. So we owe it to them to be able to have designs that do incorporate, which we would call innovative, but they were doing these things for years. So I want to invite Mr. Raymond Lord to speak a bit more on the designs that we have been doing.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. As to design functions managing climate change, what we've done and looked at, for example, of our high-rise buildings, we've actually started to borrow some of the old designs from the traditional Barbadian architecture. We've actually started looking at ideas of incorporating for the window shadings. We actually looked at the roof for the pitches, and the idea of painting the roofs has always come up. We're looking at some materials, if we use concrete roofs, that actually seals and actually repels heat. So we started to consider these things. One of the things with resilience is always the strength of walls. And as a resilient material, concrete is probably the best way to go. It is better in a sense than concrete board. It's better in a sense than the other things. What we started to do is look at our windows, our sizes, our shapes of windows, our position of windows, where we can add high-level windows to vent, and the pitch of the roof within reason and cost to allow for air to circulate better. As climate change comes, we have to look at the orientation even of the subdivision. We tend to orient houses in Barbados, bedrooms on the east. You get up with the sun, and you go to sleep with the moon. So we've started looking at some of these orientation on some of the lots we're getting where the land is facing almost east itself. And we do the subdivisions where we can put in shade trees, shadings like that, and to reduce what is called the heat island effect. All of that has to go in a constraint, and I'm going to say this up front always and be direct, of cost. The more you future-proof, the more you change, the more you climate resilient, there's a cost attached. And when the cost gets beyond affordability, then we are in a particular area. What we are discussing doing now in the ministry and in my team and with Broad is to look at the resilient factors and then look at the finishes to the house. That we make the house with all the resilient things in general, and then reduce the finishes. So we're looking at a way that we bring back something which worked across all governments in Barbados, and we seem to have forgotten that it worked, the starter home. And we are looking at a starter home concept of probably about 3 different sizes, finish it your way, and we go from there. But that will have in the designs to be resilient, to be cool, to be better windows, more windows, look at the pitch of the roof and shades, look at the color of the roof and things like that, where we use concrete, where we use steel frame, whatever. So we're working on that. Then our partner Hope, our colleagues Hope also have their design systems out of Guyana that they're looking at. You would recognize that when we bring houses from across the world with different design systems, they are designed for different reasons. And the reason someone designs a house in Guyana is not the same reason as close as we are designing a house in Barbados. You will find a house in Guyana will have very long roof eaves, a foot and above. In Barbados, we drifted from long roof eaves to protect against hurricane lift. But in Guyana, the roofs are longer because with the vertical fall of the rain system, the rains in Guyana the windows can be open a lot longer before we have to close them, before they have to close them. There are a lot of subtle differences that we have to factor in when we're dealing with climate change and we're dealing with housing designs. But for the higher density buildings, we've gone back to look at some of our traditional things that we know that worked. Our jalousied windows, our hooded windows. And hopefully, because no one will, if we put them out to start the building, the manufacturers won't cry, oh, this is very expensive. But the old ways of doing things in Barbados and the old architectural designs help battle those climate issues and those weather issues. And we are going back to look at some of that technology and bring it back to the fore.
Well, thank you very much, and I hope to see some of those designs in the bills that you put out, and that you will develop some sort of initiative that could help our seniors with their current asset. What can we do? I really would appreciate if we could do that. Thank you.
Honourable member St. Michael South Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In my final intervention in this head, even though it is something I am not wont to do, I do feel compelled to say to you, Minister, through the chair, that I think that you have performed creditably in this new seat. Those who know me well know that it is not something that I'm not want to heap praise on individuals, but I do have to commend you and your team. Commend you for the humility with which you've come to the task, the mastery of your brief that you seem to display in a short time, and the focus with which you have addressed these questions here today. In that regard, one of the things you made reference to in your opening had to do with land management. For a Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, it is not something that we hear much about from a Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. We hear about maintenance and we hear about housing. The Ministry of Economic Affairs and Development in the Prime Minister's office has a mandate for two things that I wanted to mention. It has a mandate for economic empowerment and social development, alongside growth and productivity, but it is perhaps part of our mandate that people may not immediately be aware of. And on the other end, has a responsibility for planning. In your estimates, there's a sub-program that relates to the Housing Planning Unit and its own mandate for housing redevelopment, and also the Land Registry sub-program 536. Across those two, and within the mandate that you've laid out today, Minister, on land management, I tend to think that this is one of the economic inputs that we have. It is perhaps the key economic input that we have in a country like Barbados. To have a proactive policy of land management where we know exactly how we want to use land to enfranchise Barbadians, to do it in ways that we have seen in other economies, where land becomes the pivot on which people are able to prosper. This requires a very proactive approach to land management as an economic tool. We also have a physical development plan that talks about the balance of land use. And I wanted to hear from you your thoughts in the ministry on how we approach land management as that economic tool. How we once and for all are able to wrestle to the ground, being able to use land, dispense land, allocate land in real ways for Barbadians with not much to be enfranchised and to have something. And I'm not just talking about giving somebody a piece of land with a house on it. I am talking about how we are able to divvy up the patrimony of the state for the benefit of Barbadians today and those to come. I wonder if you could say a bit about your plans or your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Honourable Member. and this is a very, very important question. Land management is not only just important for building a house, but it is important for agriculture, it's important for food security, and the livelihood of our people. And the way that the ministry is approaching land management, there's no doubt that it has to be more strategic when it approaches this issue. Now, there are a number of ways in which we look at how do we enfranchise, given the tools that we have via legislation, that the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act. Then, as mentioned earlier, there are lots of vacant lots that just lay there. In some instances, we are also guilty of this, in that previously, years and years ago, we would have sold some lots. Sometimes some people would own 2, 3, and 4 lots, and they've gone somewhere in the world, and then they're just bush growing. And it's very frustrating, because these decisions that were made before, they haunt us now, and we need to find ways to be able to unlock these situations. Now, we passed the Health and Services Act, I believe, that deals with this in terms of people that leave idle lots. But it goes beyond that, as you just pointed out, that we need to be a lot more strategic in our approach as we begin to embark on a pretty ambitious program in building houses. But with that said, we also have to be mindful of the fact that we have acquired a lot of land previously via compulsory acquisitions. And the truth is that we have to be able to make sure that those individuals were also compensated fairly. So going forward, we know that there's lands that are held in state entities, that we can unlock the potential of these lands to be able to enfranchise Barbadians. And as directed by the Prime Minister and the Cabinet of Barbados, in order to execute our strategy, we must be very strategic in the way we manage these resources, and we must have a 5-year plan on what is the land required to be able to execute X amount of houses a year, mindful that this is a very delicate resource that we have in this country. In addition to that, we have to look at the urban program as well. And I've had many conversations with yourself and the Honourable Member from St. Michael South about unlocking the potential of even just a little bit of land that we have. And the truth of the matter is that is where design now comes into play. The Honourable Member from the city is also very eager to be able to unlock some of the limited resources that would exist there, so that his constituents, especially the ones that were disenfranchised from natural disasters and fires. So ultimately in the ministry, we play a role, obviously, in our mandate, which is to build affordable housing with an industrial approach and all of these fancy things, but we also have to be mindful of the fact that these are limited resources. But it almost feels as though you hop from one foot to the next, holding your nose with one eye closed. Because, you know, we also have to be mindful that as we go into projects like Lower Burney and 40 acres and other developments, that we provide green spaces, because we know that when we look to offload some of the denser urban areas, that we have to make sure that those individuals also can have green spaces play a part, as the Honourable Member from St. Thomas said. And that is also something that we also have to insert into that calculation. But Honourable Member, you're very correct. We need to have a strategic plan in the way we manage these resources. And I can guarantee you that we'll be working as such. We've had conversations with the Prime Ministers in meetings previously. We have been tasked with drafting such a strategic land management plan.
Thanks, Minister. The only final comment I will make is to make reference to the forward planning function of the Planning and Development Department, and the fact that just as you've indicated that the land management function of your ministry perhaps has scope to strengthen its work, so too does the forward planning section of the Planning and Development Department with the appropriate resources. I think that this is a natural marriage, Minister. I think that we perhaps are too siloed between housing, our UDC planning, because a lot of what we see that now that we have to then come back and correct, if we had a proper forward planning function, we would not be doing that. We wake up in the morning and things take us by surprise. And this is perhaps an entreaty right here on the floor of Parliament for us to collaborate on that function. So I look forward to that.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. John.
Thank you, Chair. My question is going to revolve around urban development. Now, that same project at Pool that I mentioned with the whole project, with the coverage that want cleaning, is one of those. It started as a urban development. I have 2 areas in the constituency with drawings that can be used for urban development. Now, there's one thing that I want to marry to the urban development that I think is critical for all MPs, including yourself. I'm hoping that if the urban developments in St. John come to fruition, that at least 2 lots out of the urban development will be preserved for emergency housing. Because it is okay, and I have not heard the ministry mention it thus far. Officer Lord mentioned there's some additional lands that are coming in St. John, additional housing projects. But all of us are impacted at some point or the other with fires, whatever. And I think it is absolutely critical now that emergency housing be put on the radar. And I am suggesting that if the urban developments that I'm looking at for St. John is put in place, that at least 2 lots be allocated for emergency housing. And I'm not thinking that because there are 2 lots that there should be 2 houses on those lots, but that a drawing could be put in place that will allow maybe for 6 or so families to be able to access those facilities in case of an emergency. So that is my question to the minister and his team. What is the process, one, in relation to triggering a housing, a urban development? And the second part is, can that urban development, not only in St. John, but by extension the country, if it is coming, 2 lots or so be put in place for emergency housing? I yield back.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And yes, urban development is quite useful because I would have mentioned this earlier in a previous interaction, that with that type of development, you already have the infrastructure in place. So it will be a lot easier to build houses in that scenario. So yes, that is on our radar, and we look forward to partnering with you there to be able to enfranchise the people of St. John. In terms of emergency housing, it is squarely on our radar. A lot of the urban MPs in here would obviously know the feeling of having to deal with house fires on frequency. It is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I had to deal with 2 house fires myself just on Monday. So also the honourable member from the city also would be aware of this. So we have to increase our emergency housing stock. I know that there were a number of ideas kicked around in the ministry on how we treat to this. And I think that we are about to engage in a pilot in using one of the derelict buildings that we have in the urban area. Obviously, again, it's already owned by the state, 1, check. 2, it is, you don't have to put in infrastructure. And 3, obviously it can factor into the rejuvenation of the urban area. So we have that plan for there. In terms of for you in St. John, we can look at that as well. We are also looking at container houses, and we're actively looking at designs where we can deploy emergency housing at a faster pace by using container houses. And we're looking at a few designs there. Some local companies have some very interesting designs that are low cost. We don't always have to go to China for everything. There are companies here that do the work, and we have been in talks with them as well. And that could be another possibility for deploying faster solutions. I know the Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast has spoken to me about this as well, and it's an excellent idea. But we do look forward to working with all Honourable Members to enfranchise their constituents. Again, Honourable Member from St. John, I'm very pleased to be able to have this interaction with you and not another person. And we will be looking forward to these solutions in your constituency.
Sorry, Chair, in relation to the urban development, the process, and to add to that, I know the Minister would have mentioned the container solution, but I think that those container solutions should probably go in selective areas, because there's one in, if you're talking container, there's I think a Chinese house in College Savannah that in 6 months' time, it is rusting like crazy. But I still need to know the process of the urban development. What do I do with the sketches that I possess?
I would like to invite Mr. Raymond Lord, who can help in this matter.
Good afternoon once again. Minister, just in terms of geographics, I know Poole is at 4 roads. Is this the other area going to the other end of 4 roads? We had done.
Sorry, the two areas would be Sherburne.
Sherburne, yes.
Coming from the junction going
Yes,
into
I remember
the village.
Sherburne.
The second one is right at the corner of Cherry Grove.
Cherry Grove.
And a former minister of housing would have indicated that that was approved at some point in time. So I had the land surveyors section prepare sketches. There were 3 locations,
Yes.
Poole, Sherburne, and
The Sherburne one, I think, had a connection to possibly lands of Clico. I'll have to check that. And I remember we had done attend a 500 lot program section in Cherry Grove. I will have to follow back up and see if we were scheduled to do another length. I remember there was a section in Cherry Grove taken off as a ribbon for the 500 lot, and there was a possibility of a second section, but at the time the planning office had held that would be an encroachment into the larger agricultural area. So I don't think we got enough currency with it then. We can look back at it again and see whether that is feasible to do. And the PS and the minister and the PS guide us on the acquisition thereof. But I know we had done 2 sections. The urban development, where possible, that leads to villages, connects back to villages, allows us to do something similar that we did on the 500 lot and reduce some of the costs. The only caveat to that, sometimes we find that if the water line is on the other side of the road, that adds an amazing cost to the project. That's always amazing to me. That brings the cost up. But if we can get in the rural areas, some of those areas that lead, especially into villages, we were looking at one, not necessarily ribbon, at 4 Hills St. Peter. That was to be done as well. It's not, but it led to the Diamond, I think the village is called Diamond Village or something like that. At the top of 4 Hill, we had looked at a cluster there that for internet village that we had indicated. So we are looking at the urban developments because we try wherever possible to do land selections that does not challenge the status quo of the physical development plan in terms of its preservation of agricultural land. Notwithstanding, I think that is a bias, too heavy a bias there, but that's another story for another time.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. You have 5 minutes to wrap up. Honorable member, sorry, honorable member for St. George North.
Chair, I'm not going to delay you unduly. There was a point, though, that I felt led to me, as particularly after hearing the intervention of the honorable member for St. Peter and the honorable member for St. Michael South Central. I do believe, through you, Chair, to the minister, that there are some low-hanging fruit that I think the ministry can take advantage of, things that will be meaningful and will be a lot easier to implement, well, at least in my view. And I think specifically when it comes to community projects and schools, in terms of making land available and accessible to communities. Sometimes there are small pieces of land that can be easily transferred, like say to the Ministry of the Environment, to be used for clean and green or beautification projects. And certainly in St. George North, we've identified a couple of those. The general manager will be aware as well. And then as it relates to schools, there's a long-standing issue that I think of when I think of the St. George Primary School, a school that excels in sports, does extremely well at knapsack, and that is notwithstanding that it does not have a pasture, for instance. And there is an area identified as national housing land right behind the school, where that school has been seeking for years to have the land properly turned over to the Ministry of Education so it can be fenced around and so that a sporting facility can be made available to the students. I don't think that the land will be useful to anybody else except the St. George Primary School anyhow. And that is one that we've been trying to track, and it's going from Ministry of Education says it's with housing, housing says it's with Ministry of Education, but the last correspondence I got was that it was with housing. So if you're familiar, but even, that's not for discussion here necessarily, but just to say that's one of the things that's so easy, to allow our children the opportunity to expand and extend themselves, and of course, allow me the opportunity to celebrate with those children who I believe will do even better if they have more facilities available to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member, and I do agree with you that land management and the identification of assets that can be used in partnerships with other ministries to be able to do lots of different things to enhance the life of our citizens and our children. I don't want to keep the host too long, but since you raised it, I would like to invite the senior surveyor to speak on a project that the land surveying unit has been working on, which is the National Digital Parcel Fabric, which seeks to do that very thing, where we can quickly identify the lots and in terms of mine information, in terms of land tax, ownership, conveyances, all of these things will be embedded in this web-based software. So I would like to invite him to speak a little bit on it. Oh, sorry. It was Michelle. Let me invite Michelle, sorry, I got the name wrong.
Good afternoon, Michelle St. Clair, Land Surveyor. The National Parcel Fabric gives us the opportunity to identify the parcels with respect to the Barbados Revenue Authority. It gives us the information to be able to get the owners and to be able to identify in cases where there are, for example, as you mentioned in your example, schools, and they need to find areas near to them to be able to have facilities that they may want. So we've done a lot of work to be able to digitize, to be able to work with other departments and show where those areas are and be able to answer those questions that members of parliament may have with respect to their constituencies.
Thank you. In that particular case, it's actually a plan and everything that seemingly had been approved at some point. But I do take the point, and I would wish to commend the Ministry of Housing too, because where we identify lands, for instance, that we believe are NHC-owned lands that can be used for housing or any other area, I am so happy now that in just taking a reference, a location pin, and sending that in, that you can receive information in very short time. And in very short time, meaning sometimes less than an hour, indicating who the land belongs to, if whether or not that person, or how long the land was surveyed for a particular client and so on. And just on that too, since I mentioned it, I would just say that if land maybe had been approved for someone or surveyed for someone, which is a problem we encountered, but it has not been paid for, the person has not come forward and done anything, I also think it might be worth some consideration to see how you can turn that over to somebody else who can make good use of it, because the person, and a reasonable assumption can be made, and of course, once you reach out to them and so on, that they no longer need the land and so on. So this, by way of commending the national housing and also looking forward to see that project fully rolled out in the other areas. Thanks.
Honourable Member for St. Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know they're always late, and I wouldn't want to detain the House too long. My question is this. It's parochial in nature, but I think it may apply to other areas, other housing estates. I would have started this morning by asking about government's plans for some of the much older housing estates. The number of estates that were built, perhaps, I believe, as far back as the 50s, and in some cases, those structures have been compromised. And I would want to know what are the plans for such housing estates, and if I can just use this opportunity to speak to the fact that within the Belplain housing area, for example, you've had a challenge not only with the houses, but also with the drainage. And where possible, I think it was mentioned earlier that we're looking some relatively new approaches, more innovative approaches to the sewer situation that is peculiar to the Scotland district. So if you can speak to some of the plans you have, especially for the older estates and the sewage systems that impact some of those older housing estates in Belplain housing area particularly.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I would like to invite the General Manager of NHC to answer your question.
Thank you, Minister. I believe you're looking at Belplain, and we've determined, the discussion has gone on, we're well in advance of looking for a new system, something different to work at Belplain. As you know, it is on the other side of the road that the sewage flows, and it's a system, one of the oldest systems where you use a level of bigger rocks, smaller rocks. The water filters out, or it filters into the sea. The idea is that there's to be further new construction in that area at Belle Plaine in St. Andrew. And with that will come the fixing of a new storage system will be put in place. I think I should allow the Deputy General Manager to speak towards the development, the new development for Belle Plaine and also the new storage system. DGM.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Chair, what we are working on at Belle Plaine is on two fronts. We have the existing Belle Plaine subdivision, which I think we probably still own about only the duplexes. The others, the single detached, I think are privately owned. I'll check with the CLO and verify that. We have to dispose of the duplexes. The old soakaway system is dated. We've gone back and repaired it about twice. We are now looking at a project. EPD had reached out to us with a project. I'm doing a feasibility study for a new design for it from using grant funding. We've acceded to that request from them, and they're working there through that process. Hopefully that works out, and we can have the science done to determine what we will do at Belle Plaine. We do know we practically have to dig it out and rebuild it, but that is an old technology, and where we can get a better technology deployed, we'll do that. But it's going to take, not time, but it's going to take a study to determine how to treat the sewage in the Scotland district. That's a very special area. We have identified lands at Shorey Village that we hope to do a project down there for some time. It's about 7 acres, if I remember correctly, or a bit more. Again, you have to watch the number of houses you put on any lanes in St. Andrew, again, because of the inundation of water into the clear lanes. We are hoping that the technology solution that possibly comes out of the Belle Plaine can be transposed to the Shorey Village lanes. We've been doing some moderate interventions on it and modeling on it to see whether or not we can use almost a Guyanese approach. You know, in Guyana, where you put canals and these things around the houses, and then you look at how to trail away to soak away the effluent towards the tree line. So we're doing some environmental science modeling on it to see what is the best solution. It would require some time, but we are hoping probably in a year and a half be able to at least get a solution out of the Belle Plaine, out of the EPD study that they're doing to help advise us where to go on that. So the Belle Plaine area is challenged. We've seen some persons do some very large extensions, and which is their right and they're proper, and that additional households and things in there will put pressure on the existing system. And we've gone back in there, I think, twice, and we pack the rocks, and even sometimes we go and we pump the system. And that's part of the management structure. But once we can get the Shorey Village option sorted, we will look to see how's the best way. St. Andrew is a beautiful place to live, at the same time a hard place for us to build. But we are putting the best science and our best feet forward to deal with it for you.
Also mentioned that there are a number of housing estates. I used that one in Belle Plaine as an example, but I'm sure there are others that, through the passage of time, would have been compromised.
One of the interesting things, I say this not being an engineer, one of the interesting things about the older estates and their lack of modern engineering is that I sometimes feel that the old craftsmen and barbers knew things that we probably never knew. Because the Bayville, well dated, the Pine, well dated, Belle Plaine, well dated, seem to stand up to some of these climatic events strangely better than some persons' modern homes. And I am wondering if the old craftsmen that have now of sound and fond memory knew stuff that we didn't. I say that not as an engineer. So that's a layman speaking on an observation. What we've looked at is that we are looking to transfer a number of those units to persons and let the Bajan creativity take hold. People, even with the modern starter homes, do some amazing things. I am constantly amazed at what people in the Plain, because I never criticize people's attempts to make their lives better. I might have a challenge with the legality, But what people in some places of the plain are able to do in those small spaces, it amazes me as a planner. That has nothing to do with legality. It just amazes me what Bajan creativity does. The problems it may create is a different story. So what we're doing in the 20-year program is to release these units to persons and let the creativity take hold. I've seen some creative things in Belpain. I worry about it from a different standpoint, but it's creative. And I don't think, as a planner, I don't destigmatize people's attempt at self-help. So the older estates will go to 20-year program into self-help, and we can always offer professional advice through the years to help people go out. But Bajans are very creative in doing that. And indeed, some of the regeneration might be self-regeneration coming from these people. We look forward to handing over Bayville, we look forward to handing over these areas and let people within reason, within good reason and good design, come up with their solutions. Some of my colleagues who are draftsmen, even in here, will tell you that people, they themselves are very creative. The issue attached to that is one of the sewage that we have to manage, and we probably are going to have to look again to another project like from the EPD or some grant funding to see where we can improve it. Whether we can add new septics in small space, new designs, new systems, so that we can manage the area, and where we can even do small sewer systems to do that. But again, it would depend on what persons turn out and what we're able to do creatively.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate your observation as it relates to all Bajan craftsmanship. If it can borrow from the current ministry, we know that a lot of roads that were built 50 years ago are no longer equal to the task given the climate crisis that we're facing, and would want to caution in the creativity that we take into consideration that we are in fact living in a different times where we are seeing harder rains, more intense rainfalls, intense hurricane conditions, so on and so forth. So these things, I'm pretty certain that these things will be taken into consideration as we go forward. But thank you for your response. Thank you, Minister. Appreciate your answer and your response to address the issues that, especially those that impact those good people down in Belle Plaine housing area. Thank you.
Take the honourable member for Christchurch South, and after her intervention, honourable minister, as she's finished, you will then wrap up.
Thank you very much, Chair, and also as well, Minister, like all my colleagues, just to congratulate you and the ministry on the work that you've done, the plans that you've articulated. I'll ask my question as fulsome as possible. I want to know how you intend to enhance the efficiency of your operations and also your responsiveness to clients. Now, like many of the others who've spoken, I have clients, I have constituents, residents of Christchurch South, who are waiting on ALSA repairs, who've made multiple applications. So I understand the explanations about how you are intending to address that, but what I'm asking about is the responsiveness. Many of them are just basically asking, let somebody call me back and tell me this is the status. I call the contractor who turned up once, and I don't hear the person ever again. I'm paying rent for 6 months. I don't know when I can go start paying the rent to get the repairs. I submit an application 3 times. I don't know the status and nobody calls back. So it's just the human dignity sometimes of people being able to say, listen, we can't solve it now, we can solve it tomorrow. So what are the mechanisms for that? Efficiency and responsiveness.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for that question. And what we have done within the National Housing Corporation is that last year we embarked on a deconstruct, reconstruct exercise in which we broke down all of the processes within the NHC, and obviously the responsiveness as it pertains to the issues that you just mentioned factored heavily in terms of optimizing the processes. It is true that we've garnered a reputation within the Ministry of the National Housing Corporation of being unresponsive as it pertains to getting back to you on where you sit in the queue, or other issues dealing with, is the application lodged? Sometimes people go to the ministry just to see if the information has been entered in the system, and they're told that it lost. So I am acutely aware of these issues, and we are currently reviewing these processes. And I know that we have changed some of these systems that we are using. I want to invite the general manager to give you a little bit more information on what we have specifically done to date to address these vexing issues.
Thank you, Minister. It has been challenging, especially where the applications are concerned, because we've gone through a whole data plan, the whole idea of cleaning up the application system. At one time, there was just around, the estimate was 20,000. We've cleaned it up, we're down to about 6,000 or 7,000. And we do get calls from people wanting to know where their applications are. And what we've done is set up a contact center. That contact center is supposed to, when you call, is supposed to tell you about what's happening with your application, where it is, and once, we can't give you hope, because I asked them to be trying to be as factual as possible, to let them know that, well, the application is in, it's still in the system, and so on, and we hope to be able to get to it sometime in the near future. But we do try to respond. That is the reason for the setting up of the contact center. You did mention Hurricane Elsa and the fact that persons are waiting, and some persons have been waiting for an extended period of time. I know it's very difficult for the project section to respond, because most of the work was done contractually and by contractors, and the contractors, they keep calling to find out when they can continue the work. And we also get from the tenants, and most of the complaints for the tenants come through the MPs, and we do have discussions with them, but it's difficult. It's a difficult task when you have a project that has used up $85 million of the government coffers already, and still quite about 18 million more to come. And we know the challenges that the government face. So our customer service section deals with that, and we try our best to, but we know the temperament of persons who are waiting to return to their accommodation. We understand that too, and we know that sometimes the volatile nature of which they can respond to you. And we've tried our best to make sure that we can do the best in the situation that we can. My greatest hope is that we do get the funding soon, so that we can bring that project to a close. It's at about 92% now, and just about no more than, new houses are coming into the operation, because we would have had some issues with legal issues, which are being cleared up. So where before we may have had just 22 houses to finish, we now have about 25 or 26. So that will grow, but we do hope that by September of this year, the project section has told me once the funding comes by May, that we should be able to substantially solve a lot of problems across this country, and to make life easy for those families, that their lives can return to normal.
Thank you for that. Minister, I hear and I understand, but I want to suggest that perhaps you need to evaluate your contact center and your customer service, right? And I don't know why it would be so difficult. If you look at town country planning, if you go on town country planning site now, you can have a process where you can actually track your application, right? So anybody can be able to do it. And town country planning deals with, complex processes. So there has to be a technological fix to how the ministry is able to address these issues of being responsive, allowing people to be able to track their applications, and even in terms of projects, there are platforms that you can use that will allow then, again, for one, the accountability that is needed in order. So as you said, sufficient government resources, but we have to be accountable to the people, right? That's our primary responsibility. And if I can't, at a basic level, get an answer at all, it means that we're almost treating them with a level of contempt. Yeah, and we need to be able to do better. And therefore, my question is that, because you did ask for specifics, within your estimates, in any of the departments that you have under the purview, are there any plans to apply, again, a technological fix in order to be able to enhance efficiency? You have conveyances, you have multiple different departments by which those could be applied. Are there any plans within any of your sections to be able to do so, to enhance efficiency?
Thank you for your question, Honourable Member. I think what we need to do here is engage in the Information Systems Department, that we can look further to implement some of these solutions that you were mentioning. So I will definitely be, as the Prime Minister would say, roll up my sleeves and attend to this issue, because as you quite rightly said, these are our clients, these are our customers, and they deserve to at least know, to be able to track where their application is. So I will be definitely paying attention to this matter, and I'll be meeting with that department so that we can have a technological solution to this issue, which is, it is not hard to do. You're very correct. So this will be top of mind and priority for me in the ministry.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. You can proceed with your wrap-up. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to thank all honourable members who contributed to this debate. The discussions today reflect the importance of housing, land management, and community development to the people of Barbados. The ministry remains firmly committed to expanding access to safe, affordable, and resilient housing, modernizing our estates, and ensuring that Barbadians have greater opportunities for home ownership. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would like to move that Head 93 stand part.
The question is that Head 93 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do not report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
The question is that I do not report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until Friday, the 6th of March at 10 a.m.
The question is that this Honourable Chamber be suspended until Friday, the 6th day of March, 2026 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber stands suspended until Friday, the 6th day of March, 2026 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.